the Wi-Fi in here? Can you connect to the internet? Yeah, you don't have it? That'll be next. Yeah.
Could I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Could I have your attention, please? And welcome to the April 7th, 2008 Lowell Planning Board meeting. Tonight we do have 3 public hearings on. Before we get to that, first order of agenda is the minutes from the January 24th, 2008. I know we received those by way of email, but we don't have them in our packet. Have the board members had a chance to review those? Or do we need an opportunity to continue to the next meeting?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman?
I'll second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Those minutes have been accepted. The first matter on the agenda tonight is a public hearing of 1782 Middlesex Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Basil and Joanne Kanarasidis for a site plan review for the project located at 1782 Middlesex Street. The project proposes to raise 2 existing buildings currently on one site. One building operating a beauty salon, the other is a single-family home. Redevelopment on the site includes a 7,500 square foot commercial building and 19 space parking lot. The commercial building will hold 5 storefronts, each approximately 1,200 square feet in size. The project is located in the Regional Retail Zoning District. It requires site plan review under section 11.4 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. Just to give a little background on this matter had appeared before us on the March 3rd public hearing, and then it was continued to the March 17th public hearing, and continued till tonight. Back on March 3rd, we did receive comments from Division of Planning and Development. We received comments from the traffic engineer. We did receive comments from the city engineer. We did receive comments from the Board of Health, the wastewater department, utility department, and the building department, as well as the police department. During that meeting, we had discussion about the 16 parking spaces. We did talk about the tenant mixture on the property. We did talk about the dumpster location being screened. We talked about the fencing, what type of fence, the type of landscaping that be provided, and those were brought out to us by Division of Planning and Development by way of comments, and all those were addressed on March 3rd also. Attorney Hall was present with the applicant, and he had an engineer with him, Mr. Close. At that point in time, he spoke on behalf of the applicant. After he spoke and issues were raised by the planning board members, I believe Mr. Fischette had questions about the open space. Mr. Lockhart had questions about the landscaping plan and the signage. Mr. Genwood had questions about the landscaping, the parking, the grass buffer, the traffic on that intersection. Mr. Claremont raised the issue that we had no loading bays at that point in time, due to the fact that the board was requiring about a better landscaping plan. At that time, a motion was made, and all board members concurred, and the matter was continued to the March 17th meeting. At the March 17th meeting, again, Attorney Hall was present with the engineer, Mr. Close. They talked about how they moved the sidewalk. They gave us an update on plans. We talked at length about the occupancy permits at the March 3rd meeting, as well as the March 17th. Attorney Kevin Murphy spoke in opposition, representing one of the abutters. He had several concerns. Some of his concerns were in regards to the site plan review. He talked about the intersection being congested. He was concerned about the parking plan with the amount of spaces there and how it's going to fit into a 5-unit strip mall. He was concerned about the snow storage, the access for fire, the maximum pedestrian safety. Again, we covered the occupancy permits, how they'd be issued in regards to the parking on the property due to the fact that it's a mixed use, and if they get too many parking spaces, then a permit would not be allowed for several of the other units that open up. We talked about the enforcement of inspectional services. Mr. Murphy indicated that he didn't think the matter went before the neighborhood association. At that point in time, the board members had their chance to comment. Mr. Lockhart, I believe, talked about the handicap parking, the van accessibility, the strip of the parking, which was the 8 feet and the 15 spaces. Mr. Fischett, again, had concerns about the sidewalks, the adjusted sidewalks, the snow, the storage being picked up and moved off-site, and the loading plan that we had. I think Mr. Genman brought up issues again about the parking issue, and again about that intersection being very congested. Mr. Claremont talked about the fire department didn't seem to have a problem at that time, and I believe at that time, Mr. Claremont indicated that if the applicant and Attorney Hall were willing to discuss the matter further, that he made a motion, and that was agreed upon, and that motion was allowed 5-0 to continue us, and that's where I believe we stand tonight. So that's just a little way of background for anybody who hasn't been present at the past 2 meetings. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Attorney James Hall. I represent the petitioner. And when we were standing before you the last time, we had agreed that we would meet with the abutter, who was objecting to the petition, and also meet with the neighborhood group. We batted 500, which is pretty good in Major League Baseball, but I don't know how it is in the planning business. But we did get to meet with the abutter and his attorney to discuss the matter. And I suppose I'll let the abutter's attorney speak for his client. I don't believe we were able to resolve it at that meeting, so we're back here again before the board after that attempt. As far as the neighborhood group, I did call Nancy Judge, who's been the neighborhood leader out there for many, many years, and I know her very well. We had a nice conversation. I discussed this petition. She had indicated that they had a potential meeting coming up on another matter across the street, that maybe we could get a school room and have a meeting with her group. I indicated what day we were going to come back to meet, and I have not heard from her since. So we were not able to meet. I can't speak for Mrs. Judge of the group, but there wasn't as much, really wasn't any I didn't sense any great concern, but there could have been, but she just never got back to me, and we weren't able to have that meeting. I point out also, I'm sure that back in February when this started, I'm sure as a matter of course, the Planning Development Department sends out notices to all the neighborhood meetings, groups, and I'm sure they had that 2 months ago and chose not to be here. I spoke with Nancy and had a very cordial discussion. There wasn't any, don't put that in there or any of that type of stuff. So I just, I don't know what to say. I don't think, I can't speak for her. I just say that I think we made a good faith attempt to meet with them. We were unable to do so, and it wasn't because of the petitioner. So moving forward, I don't believe that our engineer has arrived. I had heard that he was on the way, but having said that, I just as soon go forward, not to take up the board's time. I think at the last meeting, I think we had a discussion with respect to handicap spaces. We had made most, if not all, the other changes on the plan at the last meeting. There was some question about 2 handicap spaces. I believe that on the northerly part of the premises next to the building, Mr. Close has put those 2 spaces in. As far as the snow storage, I think we've chosen to address it in several ways. One would be to use the green areas that are presently on the plan. There's a 15-foot strip that runs from the entrance of Wood Street up to the intersection of Wood and Middlesex, that we would use that area of that strip, which is between the entranceway off of Wood Street to the sight line that the traffic people in Lowell wanted us to maintain. We couldn't plant any trees or bushes in that area. I don't think we would want to put any snow in that area, but from that point back, we would use that for snow storage. You'll also see on the new plan that I just saw that there's a easement on the next door neighbor's property for snow storage. At this time, I think it was premature probably to put that on the plan, that we do not have a signed document. We have an oral indication. We wanted to do that. I think that if our plan did not work this evening to use the snow storage on the green spaces, that we could fall back on that. But I would respectfully ask the board to ignore that designation, in fact, scratch it from the plan, because we can't back it up at this time, that storage area on the abutter's property. And finally, when we look at the code with respect to parking spaces, that if we look at the size of this building, it's 7,500 square feet, 500 square feet per parking space. We need 15 parking spaces, not 19 parking spaces. We have approximately 27% more parking that we need. And I would suggest if the board feels we need some snow storage, we could designate one of those parking spaces for snow storage if we had to. And also with an eye to realizing that this is only temporary. We would absolutely, we're going to sign an agreement if the board in its wisdom chooses to vote for this tonight, that we will remove the snow. We don't expect to leave it there any longer than it's humanly possible to get it off the property. And I think this is consistent with what the board has done in past practices. Other projects have this same qualification. So we would agree to remove it as soon as possible. We would sign a contract with someone to remove it. If it is not within an hour or two, then it would have to be pushed onto these green areas or into these additional parking spaces that we have in the plan. And then the alternative, if we're fortunate enough to secure the written document for next door, we could put it there. I would suspect that that is what Mr. Close would have said. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it, or if Mr. Murphy would like to address the board, hopefully Mr. Close would be here by that time when he's finished.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Does anybody else on behalf of the applicant want to speak, Mr. Hall? I mean, anybody with you, with your group?
No.
Okay, all right. What I'll do, Mr. Hall, I'll let you reserve until Mr. Close gets here with the plan that you've indicated. Moving along those, anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion, I'll hold in abeyance until Mr. Close gets here, so I won't close it completely. And at this point in time, I'll turn it over to anybody who'd like to speak in opposition. In opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm Kevin Murphy, and I represent Assad Maroon, who is a direct abutter to this proposal at the Midway Car Center. We were here on March 17th, approximately 3 weeks ago, and we expressed a number of concerns about this plan. And my remembrance is that there were 2 recommendations from this board. First of all, that my client and myself meet with the proponent to discuss the plan and see if there was some type of accommodation that could be arrived at. Well, finally, last Wednesday, my client and myself met with Attorney James Hall and Mr. Basil Karanastasis's agent, Paul Godet, at my office. But the proponent refused to meet with us to discuss this proposal. So that recommendation really did not happen. The second recommendation was that we would meet with the Highland Neighborhood Association to discuss this proposal. I will represent to you, because one of my staff people on another venture that I have, there was a Highland Neighborhood Association meeting in between March 17th and today, and the proponent did not request to be on the agenda for the Highland Neighborhood Association that evening. We were there, they were not. So the Highland Neighborhood Association, despite what Attorney Hall says, had a meeting. They had an opportunity to appear before the Highland Neighborhood Association, and they did not choose to do it. I find that very, very troubling, especially in light of the fact that on information and belief, Walgreens is rearing its ugly head once again for the intersection of Middlesex and Wood Street. I never thought I'd say this, but the plan that is before you this evening is worse than the last time we were here. First of all, let me point out a couple of things. On the plan before you, the so-called amended plan, the better plan, there are still only 19 parking spaces available. The configuration is still the way it was before. The 2 handicapped parking spots are on the upper end of the plan. If somebody was down in unit number 5, they're going to have to park at the upper end, despite your recommendations to change the handicap spots. Nothing has changed relative to those spots. I ask you to check your notes, because I checked the tape relative to this meeting. And Attorney Hall represented to this board that the first tenant that would occupy the premises, or one of the premises at this proposed site, would be the existing beauty salon. Well, I represent to you, upon information and belief, that beauty salon has 8 employees. So of the 19 parking spaces that they are providing for the public, 8 of those parking spaces will be utilized by the employees of the beauty salon that is going to be the first tenant of this strip mall. Look back at the tape, look back at the notes. Attorney Hall represented that to you. So now we're down to 11 spaces to service the general public. The snow storage area. This is a very, very important aspect of this plan. When we were here before, I pointed out to this board that there is no snow storage capacity on that prior plan. So now they come in with a new plan. I ask you to look at that plan. First of all, on the side of the proposal, they say we're going to have an easement for snow storage. When we met on Wednesday, I said to Attorney Hall, show me the easement. There is no easement for snow storage there. You can go online to lowelldeeds.com and you'll see that there is no easement between the abutter and the proponent to provide snow storage at that area right there. And Attorney Hall tonight, by his own admission, cannot give you an easement showing any type of snow storage at that spot. Now, what do they tell you tonight? What we're going to do is we're going to take the snow area by the intersection of Middlesex and Wood Street. That's where we're going to put the snow. Imagine, Mr. Lockhart, you at the last meeting said that when you were on NEMCOG, that this intersection was designated as one of the worst intersections in the city of Lowell. So what are they going to do? They're going to pile up the snow. And listen, when you come into this meeting, you don't open that window and throw your life experiences out the window. You know that when snow comes and it's piled up in an area, it is piled up as high as can be. As a matter of fact, my sister and I still have a bet as to when the last snow pile at Market Basket in Tewksbury is going to melt away. You know that that snow is going to be piled up at the intersection of Middlesex and Wood Street, the worst sight line in the world for traffic. And that's where they're going to put the snow. How ludicrous is that? If it isn't bad enough, they're now going to make an intersection that you cannot see any cars coming one way or another because of the snow being piled up there. I really think that this is a bad proposal, not only because of the snow storage, but because of the egress and the ingress for public safety. As you're going to see, there are only 2 means of access and egress. One is from Middlesex Street, and one is from Wood Street. And both of them are going to have this big pile of snow loaded up during the winter, making it even more difficult for anybody to see. We asked the proponent's attorney and his agent, Paul Gaudette, during our meeting, to just take this building and just cut it down a little bit and move it back so that our client would have access in between the proposed building and his building. No, they would not hear from that at all. We are not cutting it back. We are going to keep it right the way it is. As a matter of fact, their agent said, we can put that building right on the lot line if we want to. How do you like that? That's what was said at our meeting. There was no compromise. There was saying we can move it even closer if we want to. Why would we move it back? I think this is a bad proposal. It is a very difficult intersection. They aren't providing adequate parking space by their own admission. The first tenant is going to at least have 8 of those spaces used by their employees. Vehicular access and egress is despicable. And your own requirements make sure that there has to be adequate snow storage. And where do they put it? Look at the plan. They're going to put it right at the intersection of Middlesex and Wood Street. It's not a good thing for the neighborhood. Walgreens has reared its ugly head again. They're talking about locating across the street. Something has to be done to make sure that this intersection, as Mr. Lockhart, you said, is such a terrible intersection, should not be exacerbated and made worse. We're asking that this plan be denied, especially in light of the fact that the proponent has done nothing to try and compromise either meeting with us or the Highland Neighborhood Association, and I respectfully request that you deny the petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Just to let you know, Mr. Murphy, we haven't received the new plan as of yet. We don't have a copy.
Saying anything.
No, we didn't get one. Last one we had is what we saw back on March 17th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought they had,
I understand.
because
That's not
they
your responsibility.
presented plans to
Nope,
us.
we haven't got one.
I just assumed that.
No,
I'm
we
sorry
don't.
I'm sorry.
No
that-
problem. I mean, I know you had the chance to look at it, we haven't, so I just want to let you know and anybody else who's here that we haven't seen a new plan since the last meeting. That's okay. That's not your fault. So, before I go further, let me go back to Mr. Hall and let Mr. Close go forward, and then, excuse me, if anybody wants to comment thereafter, maybe Mr. Close can answer some of the questions.
Mr. Chairman, could I approach and give you the
Sure.
plans?
Take it past Rich if you don't mind. Pull it. Throw another one that way. I'm gonna keep on past these two if I could. Yes. At this point in time, just for the record, we did receive a new plan tonight as we speak, which was revised date 3/29/08. So saying that, Mr. Hall, I'll turn it either back to you, or if you want Mr. Close to come forward, whichever you desire.
Well, Mr. Close has arrived. But I feel compelled, I think I might have to, if I could, with the indulgence of the chairman, respond to some of the comments that Mr. Murphy made,
Sure.
particularly with respect to us finally meeting this Tuesday before the meeting. That finally arrived after I called Mr. Murphy's office on 5 or 6 occasions. And he did call me back a couple of times, but I don't think it was my fault or my client's fault that we didn't meet finally until this week or last week. If anything, we all shared the responsibility in going back and forth in a week of phone calls. As far as the compromise is concerned, there was an attempt to compromise this, and there was an offer to compromise this. Mr. Murphy said there was no compromise. That is not the case. We did attempt to compromise it. We did offer something to compromise it, and it was rejected. And finally, with respect to Mrs. Judge, I called Mrs. Judge 2.5 weeks ago, had a lengthy conversation with her. She said she would do everything humanly possible to have us come before her group. And she would get back to me when she could schedule the meeting. And that's what I relied on. I think a reasonable person would rely on Mrs. Judge's statement to him, knowing her for over 45 years, that she would get back to me and let me know when the meeting is. I would have no idea when the Belvedere Association met, the Pawtucketville Association met, or the Highland Group met. So I think it's unfair to characterize us as not willing to meet with the neighborhood group when we relied in good faith on Mrs. Judge's statement to me. And I think I acted reasonably when I waited for her to return the call and tell me when we could meet. And to say otherwise, I think is unfair.
At this point in time, you want to have Mr. Close go over the new plan, if you could? Thank you.
Gentlemen. Revisions were made as per your request. Location of sidewalk to make it more amenable with the architectural engineer or architect from planning development. I believe that was the title. Anyways, so the sidewalk was moved accordingly. So wasn't the parking adjusted to accommodate the 8-foot wide area for the wheelchair access and the handicap parking. And as far as snow storage, we do have an area that we would mark out infield as the site distance. No snow would be put in that area. We do have some area along the westerly, it's the most easterly side of the lot, westerly side of Wood Street, that some snow could be piled in there. This snow will be taken off site as soon as possible. And also there's 19 parking spaces, 15 are required. In times of emergency, some of those spaces could be roped off and used as just snow storage until such time as it's taken off site. So there is areas on site still complying with your zoning and also being able to store the snow. There was talk about the most southerly line, negotiating with the neighbor next door at 2628 Wood Street, and the discussion was over an easement, the snow easement, in which 5 feet of my client's property plus 4 feet of the abutter's property could be used for snow storage. That is in negotiations right now. It's not a definite, but we think we could comply with the snow storage in that area too. But even without that area, I believe the idea of blocking off 4 spaces, still allowing for the 15 that are required by zoning, is a good idea. It'll be only temporary till the snow is taken off site. And of course, the planting schedule has been adjusted as per the DPD requests. That is the trees on the westerly side of Wood Street. And if there's any questions, I'll entertain them now.
Okay. Aaron, can I ask you a question if you don't mind? As the associate planner, have you seen these plans before we saw them this evening?
The ones just handed out, no.
No, okay, thank you. Before we proceed any further on the public hearing, any board members have any particular questions in regards to the new plan to Mr. Close? Then if not, I'm going to turn it over to the public.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question. I just want to clarify to Mr. Close. When Attorney Hall spoke, I thought he mentioned the 15-foot open space, but as I measure it, I don't think it's 15 feet as possible snow storage, not even taking into account the easement. But what you're saying is that that would not be used, and it would be, your plan is for temporary snow storages to block off 4 parking spaces.
That would be at the behest of the board if they felt that that was a feasible way to do it. We could keep the snow out of that area where the site distance is a questionable.
Could you confirm for me, please, the width of that space? With my ruler and based on here, I have that as 10 feet, but I could be way off here. I just, but that buffer between the 26, 28 and the driveway to get to the dumpster, is there a buffer? And in the old plan, I know it showed a lot of plantings in there. I'm looking at this new plan, and I don't see anything. And as I'm trying to measure out the
Yes.
buffer space,
Right, but
quite
this is
frankly, I
also
can't figure out
another area.
how much space there is.
There's, from the paved area to the width, including the, I believe it's 4 feet of easement, snow easement, that would negotiate, there would be 9 feet in that area for the total length of that lot.
So that's if you had the easement.
That's correct.
And without the easement, you have 3 feet, 4 feet?
We have 5.
Okay. Again, my notes said 15 feet, and I just want to make sure I understand that.
Right. But there's also on the westerly, the easterly side of Wood Street, which is the westerly side of our lot, where you see that tree formation. There's areas in that area outside the sidewalk. That's approximately 6 or 7 feet wide in that area. There's also approximately a 4-foot strip that runs along the back of the berm to the sidewalk.
Because that spot you just described really is in the sight line, pretty much.
Well, that's not in the sight line, sir. No, we took the plan that was given to us by DPD that indicated that sight line. And if you look at the most northerly tree on the westerly side of the lot line, in that green area, there's the last tree, that would put just south of the sight line, as indicated by DPD. So we took that and plotted it on and kept all the vegetation out of that area. So we're saying anything southerly of that could be also a snow storage area.
I have no further question at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. If Mr. Close, you have nothing further, then I'll turn it back to the public hearing, and then we'll come back to the board members.
Thank you.
Okay. Since we did start with the people in favor, and then I stopped and let Mr. Murphy speak, let me just back up a little bit, make sure that everybody has an opportunity here. Did anybody here, let me back up a ways, did anybody here want to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? At this point in time, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Now we'll go back to where we started. When Attorney Murphy spoke in opposition, he stated his reasons for opposition. Does anybody else here like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Mr. Murphy, anything you want to comment on further now that we've seen the plan? Okay, thank you, sir. All right. I know that you had the opportunity to talk to us about the plan, but we didn't have it in front of us, so it made it a little difficult for us as board members. So I just want to give you that opportunity to, if you want to address something further, so now that we have a chance to actually look at it. Okay, so if nobody else wants to speak in opposition, seeing none, I'll close that portion, and I'll turn it over to any of the board members' comments. Any board members have any comments, concerns?
I have.
Okay, Mr. Lockhart, we'll start with you.
I just want to say, this is a very important intersection in Lowell. I think we all understand the traffic situation here. And I don't feel as though I've had enough time, just giving this plan tonight, to really prepare to make a decision on this evening. I'm very uncomfortable with just looking at this tonight and not having a clear definition of snow storage, although I guess you have indicated you're willing to take it off-site, but you still need to provide a temporary spot. I still see a couple of handicap spots way up on the end of the building here. I'm just not prepared to support this tonight. I don't feel prepared to do so. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Claremont, any questions or concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo Mr. Lockhart's sentiments. Would love to see something happen at this intersection. It certainly needs to be dressed up, and it's an important intersection that needs to be dressed up. But my concern is going back, one, with the parking. As we look over the requirements, it appears that you may meet the minimum requirements for retail use at all of the units. If it were shifted to office use, though, it would be 400, you'd need one space for every 400 square feet rather than 500 square feet. So you wouldn't have the opportunity, if any of these were to be rented for office units, to utilize any of those spaces for snow storage. I think at that point, you'd be at the bare minimum with the 19 spaces. So it's a concern that the 19, I think, is at the bare minimum if, in fact, it stays at retail. It's going to depend on what your tenant mix is going to be. I'm concerned, although, you know, your plan is your plan, you certainly don't need to meet with neighborhood groups or, you know, required to anyway, but it would be certainly helpful to us as a board if we learned if there are any issues with the neighborhood group. I understand that you attempted to meet with her and had an opportunity to speak with Ms. Judge, but we don't have any input from that, so that's a concern as well. I'm just not convinced in my mind that the plan that's presented here tonight is the best use of this intersection. I think it's a little tight. I think the parking is going to end up being problematic. I think the snow storage, despite good intentions, is going to be problematic to try and get that off by the next day. Difficult to do. And I think you box yourself in if you make it a little bit too tight, and that's the comments I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Genvin, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so I'm a little disappointed that some kind of compromise couldn't be worked out. You know, we didn't continue it so that we kind of get the same plan dropped on us again a few weeks later. It's too bad that you couldn't put everything on the table and work something out that would be acceptable to both parties. But I do think that the direct abutter does have a valid objection, and it revolves around the fact that this site is so sensitive. And to echo my colleague's comments, we want this site to be developed. We think, you know, this could be a great spot for development, and I think it could make this entrance, this gateway to the city of Lowell, much more attractive. But that's what makes it so important. That's what makes it so important, because it is so sensitive. We all know about the very difficult traffic situation we have there. So when you have a site that's this sensitive, when you're walking the tightrope with regard to all the requirements on the site, it makes it really hard for us to approve it. We're here to promote planning, good planning practices, and to have a site like this with only 19 spaces, I think, is right on the edge. And you say that you only need 15, but as was pointed out, you need 15 if it's all retail and service. And if we're really thinking about planning ahead, and you have one takeout restaurant and your requirements go up to 20 spaces. Just one of the 5 becomes a takeout restaurant. And I know that's up to the building inspector to give permits, but we all know that, you know, when push comes to shove, if finances are an issue, you know, that is putting a lot of responsibility on the building department for a site that's this important. One sit-down restaurant, your requirement goes up to 45 spaces. So it's very close to the line. And when you have a site this sensitive, snow storage becomes even more important. Normally, you know, if you have an open space in your lot, like across the street, where they have a space where they can put it, still maintain the parking requirements, then, you know, it's something that can be handled off-site. But with a site that's this sensitive, just saying we're going to kind of shove it over there by the trees, you know, that's you know, that doesn't make me feel all that comfortable. So I would agree with my colleagues. I'm not prepared to support this tonight, and so I would. That's all I have to say on it at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, again, I agree with my colleagues. I would have appreciated getting this plan with the packet so we could have had a chance to look at it. But I really would like to see, you know, if we're going to look at this again, is some real substantive changes to try to address some of the concerns. I think that, once again, as Mr. Gendron mentioned, it is a key site. We want to see it developed. I think it's got a lot of potential. But I'll say it again, less is more on this site. I think you've got some things that you need to consider that will make it attractive and that'll make it a more functional site for what you're looking to accomplish. So I would look forward to seeing a plan that would address a lot of the concerns that we've been talking about now for the last three meetings on this. And I would appreciate getting the plan in time to really take a good look at it and then make a decision on it. So, thank you.
I only have very few comments since we have seen the plan the last 3 meetings. I think all the issues basically were addressed at all 3 of the meetings, so I have nothing further to add at this time. What's the request of the board?
Just by way of a suggestion, I'm not looking necessarily for a continuance, but I think we all agree that this is a plan that we want to see come back in a different format or a different shape or some modification at some point. I would like to address the petitioner to determine if they'd be willing to withdraw this without prejudice at this point and resubmit.
Just 1 minute.
Sure.
Substantial change. Yeah, right. Yeah. That's what I thought.
It's hard to get a consensus on that question.
Just a way background, Mr. Hall, let me tell you basically what the options are, so it's very simple. 1, we vote the plan one way or another tonight. If we approve the plan, obviously, anybody has any objections have the right to file an appeal. 2, if we vote against it, then basically, this plan cannot come back to us, I believe, for a period of a 2-year period. Unless you come back with a new plan, then it has to come to us first at the preliminary stage for a material and substantial change. If we do find that material and substantial change in the near future, then the plan can come back within the 2-year period. If we find that the new plan does not meet the criteria of the material substantial change, then and we deny that, then you have to wait the 2-year period. So just trying to give you a little way of background, so if your client's listening, hopefully understands what his options are, but I'm sure you would inform him as well. But just so if anybody else is listening and asking how this would affect how way we vote, I'd like to put that out there so people can understand what we're considering, what the criteria would be, what our vote would affect.
May I suggest another alternative, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
To have a 2-week continuance with the hope that we could address this parking problem that the board has. I don't want to say how we were going to address it this evening, but if certain things happen, I think we might have an opportunity to address it. If we can't in the next 2 weeks, then I would suggest that we would withdraw it. But I think it might be productive at this time to continue it for 2 weeks to see if we can address the concerns that the board members have raised this evening, rather than withdrawing it and then going through the whole process again. I think there's a very strong possibility we could do that. I don't want to say 100%, but I think there's a strong possibility we could address most of the concerns that the board has raised this evening. So I'd respectfully ask for a 2-week continuance to see if I can put that together.
Can you give us a hint
So if
as
we
to how
have,
that might work?
Well, I have to speak to my client first, Basil Karanatasis, who's not here this evening, to get an understanding of what he wants to do. And there's other things happening in the neighborhood, that's all I can say, that might resolve this issue.
all right, so, okay, we hear what your request is, and obviously the board will make a motion regardless to that request or not.
My concern is the timing. Is 2 weeks enough time?
I think 2 weeks would be enough time, yes.
Get us the plans in time, so we can study them.
I think it would give Mr. Lockhart ability to look at the plans also.
So is this new idea that might happen, is it going to require a new plan?
I think we would have to come up with an addition to that plan, yes.
So you need to find out some other alternative, develop a new plan, get it to the board and the DPD in time so that we can review it. And you're going to be able to do that all in 2 weeks, knowing that we need to have the plan probably 5 or 6 days ahead of time so that we can adequately review it. So really, you got 10 days or so.
Well, what I would ask, if we could have a continuance for 2 weeks, I can come back here before the board and say, yes, we can do it, and this is what we're going to do. And I think if I'm successful, ask maybe another 2 or 3 weeks to have the plans and everything done. I don't want to drag this out. The neighbors have been here, their attorney's been here. I would know within a week, one way or the other, if I can resolve these issues. I would like to come back in 2 weeks and say I have and show you. If you don't think they're going to be resolvable, then we won't even do the plan. I think you make a good point. We might not be able to get the plans done that quickly.
One other issue I'll just raise is that our next meeting is on April the 24th, and I understand it's a Thursday. We may not have a full board that night, so it may be in everyone's best interest to put it on 5/7, May 7th. When
That would be fine. Yep.
so.
At that point, I think we could have the new plans and everything done by the 1st of May.
So I'd make that as a motion to continue this matter to May 7th with the permission of the petitioner.
Motion's been made, any discussion?
I'll second the motion.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
we have a
Okay, I'm
comment.
sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Could I just ask that any proposed new plan would be provided to us at least a week before the meeting so that we could be
Why
prepared?
don't we make it, excuse me. Why don't we make it clear tonight, okay? We have a schedule that we adhere to when we put it out every year, when we get together and do our thing. And what we do is we have a deadline submittal. That way, when the plans come in, it has to be seen by all city departments, as you commented upon last time. So I'd request that we have this by the deadline submittal for the May 7th date. If I read this correctly, the May 7th date, they would have to have it, deadline submittal to us, it would be by April 25th, the plans will have to be submitted to make for the May 7th public hearing. That, pretty sure, Aaron, that's correct, right, the way I'm reading it here, for the May 27th? I mean, you have the deadline for the public hearings. I know those have to be early because of the advertisement, but since this has been advertised, so we could have the plans by April 25th, and then we can, and then that way, if there's any substantial changes on here, one of the concerns I have as a board member too is, we haven't had the traffic engineer, the city engineer, take a look at the new changes. And they could comment for the better, or they could comment, and then against them. And what would most likely happen was, I'm not sure, but a lot of times in the past, when we do get a new plan without the benefit of the city engineer looking at them, sometimes we make that contingent. And then sometimes that would have an opportunity to come back again and prolong the matter further. So I'd suggest if we do continue it, if it's part of the motion, if all board members are in agreement, that plans be submitted to us by the April 25th date, and anything submitted to us thereafter will not be considered for the meeting.
But I'm just asking is that
You
not
should
only
get a
that it be submitted to you, that it be submitted
Right.
to
And if not,
us.
what will happen is, we will have a copy here at the Division Planning and Development Office, so if they don't give you a copy, you can come down and get a copy from them.
All right, thank you very
Aaron,
much.
is that okay? If we can have the plan, if Attorney Murphy does not get a copy from the applicant, he can come down and get a copy from you.
Yeah, absolutely. We always keep plans on file, so anybody's
So that
welcome to
way,
come get 'em.
everything should be submitted by the 25th. If it's not in by the 25th, no, except for if we get department heads' comments, because those come in after the plan has been submitted. And once in a while, what happens is, if the applicant gets those comments, sometimes they will try to adjust those comments if they have time. But I would say the whole plans that are gonna be submitted to us should be given to us by April 25th. That way it gives us a chance to look them over, the city department's a chance to look them over, as well as yourself, Mr. Murphy. So,
It's May 5th, though, it's not May.
May 5th.
May 5th, the meeting, okay, I'm sorry.
Instead of
Oh, yeah,
I think we
May
said
5th,
May
I'm sorry.
7th.
I apologize, May 5th, right, yeah. May 5th, I'm sorry. May 5th is, it would be the meeting, correct, I apologize. May 5th is on the, right. And so if we can have the submittals by April 25th, that gives you, tonight's the 7th, over approximately 3 weeks to get the plans. That should be enough time, Mr. Hall, hopefully? Okay? I believe so. Okay, so if we can have them by that date, there'll be opportunity to look at it. So, if you want to put that in form of a motion.
Yeah, so we'll move to continue this matter to May 5th, which is our regular Monday night meeting, with the plans to be submitted to the department by April 25th, and a copy to Attorney Murphy, with the permission of the proponent.
Motion on the floor, and I believe it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, chair votes yes. Matter's continued to that May 5th date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next public hearing we have is Perkins Street. While we're getting ready, if the applicant wants to set up any plans they have, they may, while the board is cleaning up their packages.
Mr. Chairman, before we get going, can I give you a copy of a plan that I slightly revised this afternoon? It's a little bit different from the one you're
We did
looking at.
receive one tonight. Is that the same one, Aaron? The revised plan?
No, I believe this
Okay,
is
no,
further
sure. Can you give
updated.
us that while we're, okay, you can come forward. Let me just double check to see what, we did receive one revision, and I don't know if that's the same one. We had another one that we got, that Aaron gave us this evening. Is that the same one, or a little different? Okay.
What do we got?
Thanks.
Okay, excuse me. Moving along, the next matter is a public hearing. The address is located at 40 Perkins Street. A public will be held to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Perkins Ames LLC for a site plan review for the development of property located at the above address. The proposal is a modification of a previously approved site plan for the construction of a new multi-level parking structure and renovation on the remaining portion of the site to provide a total of 372 parking spaces, serving the proposed apartments located at 21-39 Perkins Street. The site is located in the institutional mixed-use zoning district. The site plan review is required under section 11.4 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear the case from the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, James Flood, 81 Bridge Street, Lowell, Mass., representing Perkins Ames LLC. With me tonight is Eddie Walsh, who is representative of the developer, Jack Luigi, who is our engineer, and Dan Winning, who is our project architect behind me. And as the notice said, we're in front of you tonight requesting a modification of a previously approved site plan. Back in January of 2007, you approved a site plan for a garage, and the design of the garage at that time was parallel to Hall Street and contained 395 spaces. In further review of that plan, my client felt that because of the support columns for that plan were located directly above the raceway running underneath the existing parking lot, it would be best to relocate the garage to another portion of the lot. And in doing so, the lot was reduced from 395 spaces to 372 spaces. And also at the same time, the project across the street for the units was reduced from 193 to 183. So all we needed was 366. The new location would run from Hall Street to Perkins Street and locate approximately in the middle of the lot. As I said, it would contain 372 spaces, and the plan as proposed has one entrance on both Hall and Perkins Street. We've received the comments from the city, and I know Jack has met with the city engineer, and he can discuss those comments. I have had some conversations with Aaron regarding landscaping, and it seems to be some confusion as to the interpretation of section 6.1.9. I don't know whether you want me to discuss it now or discuss it later. I can do either, but that seems to be a little bit of a question. But basically, in addition, the project is subject to Historic Commission jurisdiction. They've met with Steve Stoll and Chuck Parrott and have discussed the plan. I've spoken with Mr. Stoll. He does not have any problem with the design. He was going to call Mr. Lockhart. I don't know whether he did today or not, but he said he was going to do it. So unless you'd want me to discuss the landscaping now, I'll turn it over to Jack to go over the plan, and we can discuss that later.
Sure, Mr. Flood. What we could do is, if you don't mind, Mr. Flood, is as you know, we get comments from the city department, from the city engineer, the traffic, the health, the conservation, fire and police department, and we got one from the Division of Planning and Development. So if you could comment on any comments that they have, and Jack, if you could pick that up on your sheet too as well. Because I know usually myself and the other board members, we do look at these, we do highlight them, and a lot of times we will have those questions. So if you can cover them in the narrative, whatever you don't cover, I'm sure we'll pick up. So if you want to address them as a narrative, Mr. Flood,
well,
either way will be fine with me.
I think the question that I had with Aaron had to deal with section 6.19, which is entitled Landscape Open Space. And basically it says when there is a parking lot of 10 or more spaces, there shall be landscape open space within the perimeter of the parking area, or, the word is or, in areas, it's in a minimum amount of 5% of the gross parking area. So, we have designed this plan with most of the landscaping around the perimeter of the site. 5% of the site, well, the area of the parking lot that will be used for parking contains 67,366 square feet, and 5% of that would be 3,368 square feet. According to the plan before you tonight, the landscaping area is 3,578 square feet, which is 210 square feet more than would be required. Also, you're required to have one tree for each 2,000 square feet of parking area, which calls for 30-foot trees. We have 35. I think the question that I had with Aaron that kind of caused the confusion, and it says, there's something in here about shall not be planted more than 50 feet apart in each contiguous landscaped areas. That's where the question comes about. I think we have enough landscaping on the site, but it's the question of the 50 feet. I think what Aaron wanted us to do was try to put some more planters within the existing parking area. We wanted to try to avoid that because we didn't want to lose any more spaces, because we've lost some already in the redesign. So that's the area. I have a copy of that if you wanted to read it, but
Now, I have my zoning book with me, I
yeah,
know.
6.19. And I mean, my interpretation is we can satisfy the landscaping requirements around the perimeter of the site.
What I'll do is I'm just going to let Aaron speak in regards to that issue before we go further, 'cause I'm sure if you're raising that question, it might be questions on the minds of some of the board members. Aaron, do you want to respond to that, or
Yeah,
you
sure,
feel comfortable?
Sure. First, it might be useful to go over the intent of what this section of the zoning code is meant to do. And the idea is that the landscaping, and specifically the planting of trees, be dispersed throughout the parking lot. What we wanted to prevent was that you would find a project where a parking lot was laid out, and one corner had a small forest of trees, and then the rest of the parking lot was asphalt. The intent is that that is spread out throughout the parking lot. I think there's two disagreements we may be having on this section. The first one, Jim brought up the language in the beginning of the paragraph where he's talking about landscaping open space needs to be within the perimeter of the parking area or areas. My interpretation of that is that if there's more than one parking area, hence areas, landscaping needs to be dispersed out through both of those two parking areas. That's just my interpretation. And then the second part that he questions has to do with the contiguity of the landscaped areas. When we made the zoning code, contiguous was meant to mean the next most available or the nearest landscaped island, not that the only areas that are ruled by this zoning code regulation be only landscaped areas that are in connection to each other, so that an island in the middle of the parking lot does still count on that distribution or the distance between each tree. So, I mean, I think we are splitting hairs a little bit here. Really, the intent is that there's trees throughout the parking lot, not just on the perimeter. And there's several aesthetic reasons for doing so. There's stormwater reasons. There's trees provide plenty of benefits to the environment. I think anybody can understand that. So that was basically, I think, where we're coming from. So we want to see those trees properly dispersed throughout the parking lot. Along Cabot Street, there's plenty of places to do so. They've added a couple islands on the second at the second aisle, parallel to Cabot Street, the north and the south. The one area where they're going to run into some problems and may have to take away some parking spaces is on the surface parking area on the other side of the parking garage. But hopefully that clarifies a little bit. I'm happy to add if the board wishes.
I think there's some real confusion on the interpretation. Okay. I mean, I think you've got to realize that what we have now is an existing parking lot, which we're going to improve, so I think
basically, we get the context of basically what the landscape and open space is, what you're trying to do by putting the trees in, how you're trying to justify it, and how Division of Planning is looking at it. Obviously, we'll consider that. I mean, if Aaron feels there's more trees that could be added to the Cabot Street side. Maybe that's something that we could work through the landscaping plan, if there's no objection to that. It does appear that there could be more room over there, but I'll leave that as it may, and we'll
Well,
go
we
forward
can
from there.
discuss that. I just don't want to, I don't want to lose any more spaces. We don't have to, because I think this is going to be beneficial
Right.
to
But
both
I'm saying, if you might be
the
able to
units
pick up
in
some
the
trees without
neighborhood.
losing spaces on one side, he said, and then the other side would be something different.
So I'll turn it over to
Okay,
Jack.
thank
He
you.
designed it.
Jim, I'm sorry, could I just comment on that?
Sure.
You know, I think that the intent of the code is pretty clear. There's even a picture here, for those of us that don't like to read, that shows exactly where, how the trees should be configured. And, you know, they're configured within the lot. And the idea is to try to eliminate that sea of black asphalt that you see in a lot of parking lots all throughout the city. So, you know, I kind of concur with Aaron's thoughts that we ought to try to break it up as much as possible.
I would agree with you, Steve, except for the word "or."
Okay.
I think when you have the word "or" and then you have areas, the areas are what's shown on this plan. And like I said, this is an existing parking lot. It's
Yeah,
been
I
there
know that.
Been there for a long, long time. So
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is improve it. But I think there's a real question on interpretation of that, because of the word "or."
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Jack?
And the word contiguous, if I could just add that. This plan is a little bit of a revised plan from the one that was previously submitted. As Aaron said, I did add a landscaped island here at his suggestion. I put some additional trees along Cabot Street that are less than 50 feet apart, and then we added a couple of landscaped areas where they were available in parking lot B. The 67,366 square feet that Jim mentioned actually includes the total footprint of the parking garage. Now, portions of the footprint of the parking garage on the base level are not going to be used for parking. There's an office, there's some concrete islands, there's a couple of utility rooms. So that 67,000 square feet is actually a high number. We really don't have 67. It's probably something in the order of 65,000. But to be conservative, we went with the whole footprint of the garage and considered it as parking area. I can kind of go through the city engineer's comments, because that's probably more important than the layout. She reviewed the plan. I met with her, with one of my other engineers, and Ed Walsh, last Thursday. We addressed her concerns in her office, and I submitted some more information to her last Friday to address these concerns. But I'll go through them right now. The building at the property line. Either move the building 1 to 2 feet back from the property line or require easements for the footings and the sidewalk. This building is essentially goes from property line to property line, from street line on Perkins Street all the way to street line on Hall Street. Beneath the surface of the parking area for the column supports, there will be a concrete caisson underneath the column, which will encroach about 6 inches into the street line on Hall and Perkins Street. So what we were proposing there, it's only a 6-inch encroachment, and it's below the surface, you'll never see it. We submitted an easement, a proposed easement plan that would give us a foot to construct those column supports. No utilities for buildings shown on the plans. We added there's an office at the entrance off of Hall Street, and then in the future that office will have a bathroom in it. So we proposed a water line and a sewer connection to that office building. There's an additional sewer connection shown. Apparently the plumbing code, the Mass Plumbing Code, and Dan can speak to this better than I, but the plumbing code requires that the drainage, any drainage within the parking area on the first floor and second floor be collected and discharged into the sanitary system. The rainfall that falls on the top floor is collected and then brought into my drainage design. And The reason for that, I'm going to have Dan speak to that because I'm not sure of the exact reason, but it's required by code that the two lower levels. It's very minimal drainage. It's just what falls off the cars in the winter or if there's a rainstorm when they come in. Handicap ramps at Cabot and Hall are not shown. The plan's been updated to show the existing handicap ramps at all of the intersections. All sidewalks to be restored per city ordinance. That's not a problem. We added a note on the plan, I believe, that said, the discussion we had with city engineer was, we're not doing any work on Cabot Street, and we are doing some work on Hall, and Perkins Street is being completely rebuilt. So we explained to her that we're not really doing any work on Cabot, so she agreed that we would only have to rebuild the sidewalks in the areas that we were disturbing. And according to the city ordinance, they can be apparently bituminous concrete. No soil analysis is provided. We had a long discussion with her about that, and we gave her a copy of a geotech report that was done on the property, and that seemed to satisfy her concern there. New Mass stormwater regulations require a stormwater report. That was the item that I submitted to her on Friday, so she has that. No stormwater connection to the sanitary line for any reason. We're not proposing one. And no untreated discharge is allowed. She's talking about the drainage. The existing drainage pattern on this site right now, as you know, probably, the whole site is completely paved. And rainwater that falls on this parking lot traverses the site from south to north and ends up going into the drainage system in Perkins Street. Unfortunately, the drainage system in Perkins Street ties into the sewer system. So what we're doing is we're proposing to intercept it before it gets there. We're surrounding the site with a berm. We're directing the on-site drainage to 2 catch basins, one on each parking lot. We're bringing it into a drainage system that runs through a storm tech chamber, which is a device that removes the grit and oils and greases from the water. And then it's going to discharge into the existing raceways that are underneath the site. Those raceways start at the Wanalancet Mills, and they traverse down through our site and end up going into the Lawrence Canal, which is still located under the Hub Hosiery building and the McQuaid building. From there, it travels underneath the buildings into the Lawrence Canal and then ends up in the Western Canal and eventually into the river. So that was her comments. One other correction I wanted to make. This plan actually shows 373 parking spaces, not 372.
You want to go up there? You finished yet?
Yeah, I'd like Dan to go over the drainage.
Jack, while I have you there, we also had a couple of things from Mr. Gomes from Transportation Engineer. Do you have a chance to look at those?
I don't have those in front of me, but we did take a look at
Can I
it.
just give you a copy if you can address those? I think one of them you might have addressed already with the sidewalk.
Okay.
Since we're on that topic, if we could just pick it up from there, I'd appreciate it.
Yep,
Yeah, too.
he had mentioned that the parking layout shows the spaces to be 8.5, where 9 wide is required. All of us are kind of at a loss to see what he's looking at there. All the spaces that we're proposing are 9 by 18, so.
Okay.
Sidewalk should match existing. Any new construction shall be cement concrete with VA vertical granite curbing. We went over that with the city engineer, and the existing sidewalks out there are bituminous. So they said that would be acceptable to
So one is
replace-
to match it and one's to give it the other way.
Yeah. And I think they might be talking about the handicap ramps, where we're going to rebuild the handicap ramps. Those are going to be concrete.
Okay,
But the sidewalks are going to be bituminous.
so you'll have consistent with the sidewalks now, but give the concrete for the handicap.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Wheelchair ramps are not up to ADA standards. That's exactly what they were talking about, the sloping of the handicap ramps and the fact that they're going to be concrete. And we did add a note on the plan that said all of the handicap ramps would be in compliance with ADA. A stripe arrow on the pavement at the entry and exit lanes denoting traffic circulation, we don't have a problem with that. We can do that.
Thank you.
I'm Dan Winnie, architect, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Good evening. So I'll address the plumbing issue, the drainage issue. Our plumbing engineers will be designing the drainage according to the state code, which is to say that all of the rainwater that falls on the top levels of the garage, which are like a roof, they're required to drain to the storm drainage system. All of the drains from floors underneath that, which don't get direct rainwater, they're required to pass first through a separator and then into the sanitary system, because they're the ones that are likely to contain any drops of oil or gas, which need separating, and the volume is, of course, significantly less. So that's what the state plumbing code requires, and our plumbing engineers will be designing accordingly. Are there any further questions on that matter?
I have none at this time, but if we do, we'll address you. Thank you.
Okay. I might also point out, there was a comment about the handicapped access in and out of the garage, and we appreciate that comment from staff, and I'd just like to point out to the board, maybe easier if I could come up a little closer. Previously, in order to eliminate any conflict between pedestrian traffic exiting the garage and vehicle traffic, we've moved the stairs into the corners of the garage against the exterior wall. So the stairs are right now at the sidewalks. So that when you come down this stair, for instance, on a Hall Street, which is here, you'll take a left and you walk out of the building in this way directly onto the sidewalk, instead of crossing a traffic aisle as you did before.
Okay.
This means that the stairs show up on the facade of the building. So that you can see here in two locations.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should have walked up and down. But here are the two stair towers now showing up at the corners of the building directly on the street, with glass infill to provide some articulation of the facade and greater security for the users. This design is actually closer to the previously approved design than the one we first submitted. So you're also seeing the areas of brick on the facade. The building now has its two shorter sides onto the street at Hall Street and Perkins Street. We're using the exact same linear feet of brick that the earlier approval showed, but it's now more concentrated on these two shorter street facades. So it improves the general look of the building, I think.
Is this the view from Hall Street?
This is the view from Hall Street, exactly. And this is the view from Perkins Street.
And this is, what is this here?
That's sandblasted concrete base with brick-faced precast concrete on top of it. We've reviewed these plans with the historic staff, and we'll be continuing to review the final choice of the exact brick so that it's the best match for the historic brick in the area.
Don't you have some metal panels somewhere that are colored?
The general railing design of the garage is a perforated metal design,
Yeah, that's what he was
galvanized
talking about.
metal,
Okay.
and that's the same as it was before.
Just galvanized, there's no color to it.
Yeah, there's no color to it. We reviewed that too with the historic staff,
Yeah.
and the feeling was that it was best to let the brick take the foreground and not to compete with it with any other
Absolutely,
color.
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did everybody see what they need to see? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's basically it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm here to answer any questions.
Before I go any further, Mr. Flood, I know Mr. Lockhart is a representative from the planning board
Yep.
for the historic board. Mr. Lockhart, do you have any input you want to give us before we go further on this matter in regards to
Well-
you representing us on the historic board?
Yes, I did have a conversation with Steve Stoll today, the administrator of the historic board, and he was very comfortable with your proposal. And I'd just say if he's comfortable, I'm comfortable. I haven't, not seen this up until tonight, but Steve is very detailed and, and yes, and he liked this proposal better than the previous one, so I think you've just strengthened your position.
They're very similar, but he did say that to me, too. He liked
Yeah,
this.
he liked what he saw. That's important.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Okay. Having said that, if nobody else here on behalf of the applicant, I'll turn it on over to the public at this point in time. Anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. At this point in time, we'll turn it over to the board members. Any of the board members have any questions or concerns? Mr. Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aaron, in your memo to us, number 2, comment number 2, you talk about the setback, required 3-foot setback from the parking lot and the lot line from section 6.1.10. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, mhm, yep,
Okay,
correct.
can you, so this plan does not meet that requirement, is that right?
That's correct. If you look at the side, it's the, I believe it's the eastern side of the parcel, adjacent to parking lot B. It's hard to see where the lot line is on this plan, but there isn't any kind of buffer in between the parking lot and the adjacent parcel. So that's what that's referring to. You can kind of see where it says limit of work. I believe the 20-foot wide access easement might give you a little bit of understanding where the parcel line is. And the easement, the left border on there, the western border, would be where I would assume the parcel ends. So that's where you would see a 3-foot buffer.
So you're talking about along Hall Street and along Perkins Street?
The area between those two, perpendicular to it, basically the parcel line that runs parallel to the access easement.
Okay. So that, section of the zoning code does not apply to the location of the parking garage along Hall Street and along Perkins Street?
That's correct. Buildings can be built up to the
Right up to that.
to the parcel line.
Okay, so we're talking about the setback of the actual lot on the, I guess that would be the western side?
I think it's the eastern side.
Eastern side, okay.
There was another portion too, I believe they addressed it though, along the drive lane on Perkins Street. There's a drive lane that comes out of the parking garage towards parking lot A. They have actually widened that buffer, looked like between 1.5 and 2 feet, but it's now 3 feet. So that was another area that was a concern, but now it just looks like this area on the eastern side is the only area that doesn't have a buffer.
Okay. Did you want to address that?
Well, I think along, why don't you point that section out, Jack? We have an easement on that area in there, which we are utilizing for parking in this plan. So, and it's in existence, it's been there forever. It hasn't changed since the last plan that we presented. So we've always used it and we intend to use it. So there's no, I mean, if we broke it right down the line, we couldn't use that easement area. You understand what I'm saying? Why don't you point it out in the plan, Jack?
It's right within this 20-foot access.
Yeah.
Right here.
The parking spaces go over into that easement area, Steve.
Currently?
Yeah, right, currently, and under this new plan, too.
Okay.
So that's why there's no break in that area, because there's an existing easement there. It's the same on the previous plan that was approved.
And does that easement carry through? Does that easement?
Right. It's a perpetual easement.
So Aaron, does that address?
Yeah, it sounds
Your
like it. I
concern?
haven't spoken with Jim on this, but if that does make sense to me now that he's
Okay.
addressed that, yeah.
All right. All right, thank you.
Any other board members have any questions? Mr. Fischett?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just now, relative to the the easement for the footings, I'm assuming you talked to DPD on that, and I'm assuming,
City Council issued, there's been a letter submitted to the City Council with an easement plan. The city's been very cooperative in everything in this whole project, so I don't anticipate. We're 6 inches out, we've asked for a foot easement so we can maintain it. And so, I mean, I can send Aaron a copy of the letter, it should be on the agenda tomorrow night.
okay, okay, all right,
That has been submitted.
okay. And I noticed you said there was 373 parking spaces on this plan, and I think what we previously had submitted was 372. So we have one for landscaping, right?
We found one.
Yeah, one for a landscape.
Depends on where you want to
Do
put
it
it.
now.
No, all kidding aside with that, I really think the aesthetics have a lot to do with how even people perceive the city, and it's a high visible location, and I can appreciate, I'm thrilled with the Historic Board really having oversight on this as well, but you've got you've got LaLasha Park right there, and you've got the Brewery Exchange, and there's just a lot of people that come through there, and obviously that it speaks volumes, the people coming into the city, whether it's a tired mill town or whether it really takes a lot of pride in itself, and a lot of those sites there really I think speak to the work that the city has done over the last decade, really, in planning and in development and design. And so I'm pleased to see the additional trees on Cabot Street, because I know the plan we had originally didn't have anything. And, that's a straight shot down Cabot, and, there's a chance to improve that, and so I appreciate that. But I really would like to see a landscape island with that bonus parking spot that they've presented to us this evening. And I'm willing to actually defer to planning and development for the landscape architect as to where the best spot would be to locate that, because I've got some thoughts on that, and I'm still thinking how visible it is on Cabot Street, and I think you've got some opportunities in that middle spot to take one of those. So you've got the two that you put in here, and then one in the middle, I think would actually break that up nicely, and that would match the spirit of having that within so many feet across that surface. But I would like you to keep that option.
I think we can do that. I just want to point out, and I talked to Eddie, in the design of this, both the city and Historic wanted them to build this garage with the hopes that maybe expanding it at a later date, which would be over towards the UMass parcel.
Okay.
So that's why I'd rather see something on the other side, because if it's expanded, it's going to cover it anyways.
And that's why I kind of want to leave that. That's
Yeah.
why I say, usually I like, to be honest with you, I like to control it myself where it's going to go, because I have a good idea what I want it to look like. But I certainly have no problem with,
I had discussions with Aaron today that maybe these little triangles, we could maybe pick up a couple without
Sure.
losing the parking space,
okay,
to
sure.
put them in there. That can be done, right?
Yeah, the only problem with that is it interrupts the drainage flow, and it's a little more difficult to snow plow if you have things in the middle of the parking area. But it's probably better to have one space, as you're suggesting, than a lot of little breakups of the parking area. We have this drainage right now flowing straight down here into this catch basin. Anything that we kind of put in the middle here is going to interrupt that, and the water is going to have to get around it. It can be done.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but it does pose a little bit of a, yeah, that would be.
Put one closer to the road.
Towards
Yeah,
Cabot Street?
closer to Cabot Street, sure.
One here wouldn't interrupt the drainage at all.
Sure.
It would just come right off of that, but.
Okay, no, and I think, and again, I'll applaud you for adding, because I know the plan that we had didn't have any plantings over here, and so I was encouraged to see that as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to
Sure,
follow
Mr.
up on
Dent.
that, and that kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier. I agree with Jerry's suggestion that we should try to break it up to some extent. We've all seen parking lots that are, again, the sea of asphalt, and when you have just one or two tree islands in there, it gives you a completely different feel. And people are walking by the site all the time, going to the ballpark and everything, and I think it says a lot. if we can do that. And I think that is the spirit of 6.1.9, even if there may be some issues with the wording that make it a little bit.
No, I think we could lose one and do that. I don't think a problem. But on the other hand, too, when you have so many people walking by, a lot of times those trees disappear at night.
Disappear at night?
Yeah, people steal them.
Yeah,
But
well,
we will do it.
that happens, we'll plan
No,
another
I had that discussion, so we can do that. But as Jack said, he didn't want to interfere with the flow of the drainage inside, so.
Mr.
Yeah,
Lockhart?
just one, we haven't talked about lighting at all. Can you just expand on what your lighting is gonna be in the open parking areas particularly?
Yes, the lighting, the best way to light the top level of the garage is with a carefully selected fixture that has good cutoff, so that it doesn't throw any glare onto abutting properties. What we're studying at the moment is whether it's possible to light these side parking lots from fixtures mounted at the top of the facade of the garage, so they can avoid having poles in the parking lot. But it's not clear yet that there's a fixture available, because it's a long way to go from here to light it properly. So we're probably going to have to end up with some poles that will still be designed to avoid glare on the abutting properties.
You'll seek the historic board's input on that, I hope.
We will.
They have a lot of experience with that type of thing, and I think it could really dress it up nicely. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Claremont?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the plan. I think it's well done. In terms of the parking, with the reduction in units to 183, I think you're only required, as you said, to have 366. So you've got a few parking spaces to play with a little bit if you want to modify the landscaping and break it up a little bit, as was suggested earlier. And I think you just work with DPD landscape people. They'll help you with that. And other than that, I think the plan is great. So, no other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I do also like to say that I'd like to see how you put the landscape on Cabot Street, and I think it really adds to your site. And I know basically they're talking about if you lose one space, if you put it towards Cabot Street, that might help beautify that area. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, the last time that you were here, Mr. Flood, you've indicated, when we did have the traffic conversation, that you did speak with the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, and you're going to have them come right back.
That was a long time ago.
I know.
That's when we came through with the building, the units, too.
Right. So you talked about they were going to come in that area to pick
Yeah, we're
up.
still going to try to do that, sure.
So what I'm getting at is thinking of keeping that in mind. If you
Yeah.
lose the one's parking, you still have the bus transportation in the site.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of development in the back of this project where you've done before is consistent with the neighborhood, and I like that idea. And I like the fact if you can get the bus route through there, then that should, help out with any problem if you have anybody if you lose the one extra space for the landscape.
No, but I think besides servicing the mills that we're going to redevelop, this during the day will be available
Right.
for Warren-Lancet, any of the other buildings around.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
that's
So
why-
I'm saying, I liked your idea before
Yeah.
about approaching them and doing that. And I
Yeah.
think that adds to your whole project.
Right.
And I'm saying so therefore, if you did lose the one parking spot to pick up the landscaping plan, I have no problem with that due to the fact that you're gonna put on the bus route, and it's gonna actually help all the neighbors down there for you.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, I remember you presented that last time, the first time, and we were very acceptable to that. We thought that was a great idea on your
Yeah, I
behalf,
think-
and your client did a good job of presenting that to us for the congestion area. And I think if you did lose the one spot, with that in mind, I wouldn't have any problem in putting that, extra landscaping as indicated towards Cabot Street, so you don't have the problem with the plowing.
I think that's right. When we first came in on site plan for the mills, we felt that most of the people that would rent those mills would probably come out from work in the Boston area and would take the train. And that's why we went to Jim Scanlon. He wrote the letter to this board
Right.
saying that he would try to revise the
Yeah.
bus schedule.
I remember that was the last site plan, so I'm just trying to
Yeah.
pick that up from where we left off. And
Right.
hopefully, if that's working, that helps your site for everything.
Yep.
So let me just back up one question I have. So tomorrow you have for the easement before the city council to
Right.
take here? Okay.
Right, yeah.
So if that was a conditional approval tonight on behalf of this board, would you have any problem with that?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not a problem. And if we don't get it, we'll just have to move it back a little bit. No.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no
We're
further
talking 6 inches, and I don't
Yeah,
think
I
there'll be
mean,
a problem.
I understand that. I know the city's been involved with work on this
Oh,
project throughout.
they've made it one way, they've given us an easement for the entrance, they've been wonderful, the city's been wonderful, so
And,
I
you
don't,
know, as indicated, I know you have the historic board on board. That's why I had Mr. Lockhart represent what you told us as well, so we have it from both angles. And it's indicated by Mr. Lockhart that the historic board likes this layout than what we previously approved. Therefore, I think that's a benefit. I think you did a good job in addressing, Jack, all the comments that we had here. I appreciate that. When you do that in a narrative, makes it easier to follow place with that, and I think it'd be a nice project.
I think as far as the city's concerned, Mr. Lannon, they're very happy to have a parking garage in this area, because there's a great need for it in that whole area with what's going on over there, the development. So this will be very good for the neighborhood.
Thank you. I have no further comment. What's the wish of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, site plan approval for the project, conditional upon the passage of the easement,
Do the city council tomorrow night?
city
Okay.
council tomorrow night, and that the applicant work with the DPD on additional landscaping in the open parking area. And the historic board on the outside lighting requirement.
Second that motion. Mr. Chairman.
Motion's made and second. Any further discussion?
Excuse me on that, what was the third?
Work with the historic board for the lighting, Aaron?
The outside
You know,
lighting.
the outside lighting that the chairman talked about?
Is that something you'd want to be back before the planning board once they have that finalized, or?
Do you want that back before us? Do you feel that the historic board will address it appropriately?
Oh, I think we can address that appropriately. It's not
So
necessary.
basically,
to be back.
Aaron, the three conditions would be that they get the approval from the city council tomorrow night. It's on the agenda for the
We're
easement.
not gonna get the approval tomorrow night, it'll
you
be
gotta-
referred out, and
You'll
then,
get the approval.
Whatever,
yeah, we'll proceed
But,
further.
okay, so, to get the easement from the city council that they're requesting, work with the landscape and plan with the Division of Planning and Development,
Right.
and also for the lighting plan, also to work with the historic board. Those are three conditions, Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
right? Any board have any further discussion on that? There was a motion made by Mr. Lockhart and seconded by Mr. German. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes.
I do have another question on the landscaping. We talked about the parking lot A along Cabot Street for additional landscaping. I know there was some mention of an additional building on the other side. Is that something where we're gonna be working with them to put landscaping on parking lot B? Is that what I'm hearing? Or just for some, or are they gonna be needing a variance to not?
I think the request was for the landscaping to be on the proposed parking lot A, which runs by Cabot Street.
Correct.
It would seem to me that they
Specifically
would
say
need to
that.
go get a variance on the portion of parking lot B if they're not gonna be able to meet the requirements of the landscaping plan.
Well, it's an existing parking lot that's been there, it's probably, if it's something in the zoning that was recently passed, it's non-conforming, and I really don't think we're gonna need it.
Well, this is a new plan. It's a new application for a new site plan. It's a completely
Yeah.
different plan. It's the same use, but it's a very different plan.
It's the same use, it's a different, but as far as that area is concerned, it's no different than what was approved before.
There's less parking spaces, the building's different, the location of the building, the landscaping is
Yeah.
different, the circulation
But
is different.
but that area has always been there, and has always been open. I don't know why we would have to do that. I think that's just muddying the issue.
Well, I understand it is splitting hairs, but so we have some guidance in creating a landscape plan of where we're looking to do. As we move forward, and with plans that come in, anytime there's reconstruction of a parking lot, it then has to conform to the guidelines of the zoning code.
Yeah.
I mean, there's room for additional trees over there. There's room for additional landscaping on that side, and it wouldn't take much.
Wait, on what side?
Parking lot B.
Which is what?
The one in the middle,
Where?
on the right.
Those parking spaces go into that easement area. We don't have rights to put trees beyond.
They don't have to go in the easement area.
The what?
They don't have to go into the easement area.
Well, to have the room to pass, to go through there, Jack, you designed it.
In order to meet all the minimum requirements, I suppose we could reduce the size of the aisle.
Or take a couple parking spaces. or take a couple parking spaces across the way there, right adjacent to the building.
You've lost me.
Yeah,
Could you
just
show 'em
work
what
with
you're
them
talking
on
about?
it, that's all.
To do with that? Okay. So, let me back up here again then. So getting back to the landscape plan, go ahead, Al, why don't you address that to him, and I'll get back to Mr. Lockhart on his motion.
There's room along the building to put landscape.
Can't meet this setback requirement.
Right, there doesn't need to be set, I'm not talking about setback. Oh, okay. I'm talking about the landscape.
Yeah.
Not the setback.
Yeah, just work with them.
So you're talking about, I thought you were talking about the other piece of property.
No, I'm not talking about the setback, I think that's addressed with the easement.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's addressed with the easement, I'm just talking about it, we've discussed increasing landscaping on this side of the park area, where there is room to add additional trees where there's no parking spaces. I'm talking about this side, where as it is, there needs to be some trees in here.
Al, could you just pick up your mic, because they're not picking up on it, okay? Use the,
Yeah, no problem.
yeah, thank you.
So what I'm pointing at is, on this side, we've discussed, and I think there's agreement that there's ability to pick up landscaping without losing parking spaces on this side. My question and confirmation,
Okay.
before we move forward, is we need to deal with this side. We need to make sure that the distribution of trees on the side meets the zoning code requirements. And there's not many parking spaces, we're talking one, maybe two, and it can be done on this side without encroaching on this side.
Jack will work with that, but as I said, if there's going to be any expansion of that parking garage, it's going to be that way, and if that happens, those trees will be
We
gone.
haven't received any kind of phasing strategy, so we don't know when that would be.
Yeah,
And it could be 25, 30, 40 years from now.
I hope not, I hope it's before
Neither
that.
do we, I mean, it would be
Remove
great to
those
have it
trees.
next year, but there's no indication of that.
That's all.
So let me just back up. So in regards to the landscaping plan, Mr. Lockhart, do you want to encompass that we do it on parking lot A as well as parking lot B, that the applicant work with them for the landscaping plan?
Yeah, just work with DPD on the requirements. That's
I mean,
that's all I'm suggesting.
So, Mr. Lockhart, could we,
On both parking areas.
so could we make the condition that the applicant work with the DPD on both parking areas so that the lot meets the requirements of 6.1?
Conforms to the, yes,
Okay, great.
fine.
okay, so basically,
You can do that.
you have the three concerns now, Aaron. One would be for the easement, the other one would be the historic board, and the third one would be the landscaping plan to look at Lot A and Lot B.
Got it.
Okay, so therefore, the motion was made and second, and it passed with 5 in favor, none against. Thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Yeah, you really need it.
Alan, can we give you this new one that came in tonight? Can I give you this new plan that just came in tonight, so you can, oh, did you end up getting a new one as well? Okay. There's an extra for you. Yeah, I got it down pat. I think you have more storage than I do. Good luck, Jack.
Good luck, Jack. That's it, that's a good project, it'll look great.
Okay, moving along, the next matter we have is another public hearing. This matter is 229 Stedman Street. A public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Daily General Contracting, Inc. for a site plan review for the property located at the above address. The proposal includes the construction of 17,040 square foot commercial building and 28 parking spaces located at 2 separate lots. The commercial building will contain a parking warehouse below grade, office space on first floor, and second floor mezzanine for storage. The site is located in the light industrial zoning district. Site plan review is required under section 11.4 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Hi, my name is David Daly. I'm the principal of the Daly General Contracting and Pride Star EMS. We are going to be the developer, general contractor, and actual primary tenant of the premises located at 229 Stedman Street in Lowell. We acquired this property back in the fall, November of 2007, with the intent to construct a commercial building. What resided on the property at the time was a very inhabitable, to a degree inhabitable, dilapidated residential building that sat almost directly about 20 feet back from Stedman Street. It was zoned light industrial, and it's since its inception, has been used as a residential dwelling, again, in disrepair. We purchased the property in November and started the process then. Currently, what our game plan, our goal is, we have our corporate offices up on Stedman Street at 225 Stedman Street. We have the Daily Group, and then Daily General Contracting has a unit down at 9 West Adams, and so does Pride Star EMS, the ambulance company that will also be inhabiting. They have 2 units down there. So our goal actually is to put everything under one roof. Right now, operations are somewhat stymied by this, that we have offices in basically three different locations. So when we came across this property, we found it unique in the fact that we thought we can house all 3 businesses there, making operations better and actually adding to the area, not only from a standpoint of a architectural standpoint, where what we feel is a very nice building, a very architecturally sound building, but also from the fact that we could increase the tax base for the city significantly, unfortunately for us. But I have here with me Jack Sullivan, our engineer, our civil engineer, and Jim Jazokis, who is the architect for this project. Our intent, as is outlined in this letter to the board, basically, Pride Star EMS fundamentally is a non-emergent ambulance and chair car service. So utilization of lights and sirens is not going to be an issue at this point. We hope to house our ambulances in the warehouse level, in the garage level. And on the first floor, we hope to put our offices and, dispatch center and day room and all the other executive offices for the other companies on half the building, about 4,500 square feet. The other 4,500 square feet we look to lease out to another business. At this time, I haven't firmly, through some negotiations, I haven't firmly found a tenant for that, but we look forward to making that a permanent thing in the next probably couple months once we hopefully get approvals tonight. The site, like I said, calls out for light industrial, so what we have here tonight falls within that category. Again, the building itself is very, very nice. We look to do some nice stonework and some really tasteful architecture. As some of the board members may know, I've constructed quite a few properties in the city of Lowell, residential, industrial, and commercial, and have been before the board many times, and look forward to hearing your questions tonight and hopefully answering them.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dave. My name's Jack Sullivan. I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. And before I get started, we did come before this board a little over a month ago with a pre-application filing. So the board may have some memory of that prior to submitting these definitive plans to the city. Basically, this plan, as Dave stated, it's going to be a 2-story mixed-use building. I'll let Jim Jazokis, after I finish my spiel on the civil engineering side, go over the architecture and the site rendering. What we're required under the zoning bylaws is to provide 28 parking spaces. We've done that. We're providing 2 handicapped accessible spaces for this property as well. And this site will be basically, based on the existing topography of the site, from the front of the site at Stedman Street to the rear of the property, there's about a 27-foot drop in elevation. So what we tried to do is, where these will have two distinct uses, is we wanted to have two entrances to the building. So from a site planning perspective, we're going to have an upper parking lot, which will service the first floor office space area, and then we'll have a lower parking lot, which will be accessed through this entrance along the southerly side of the site for parking for the employees of the ambulance service. We had looked into, and I know Aaron had mentioned this at the pre-application meeting, and I spoke to him about maybe trying to eliminate a curb cut. We have two curb cuts for this site. We did look into that, but we felt for Dave trying to possibly lease or rent office space for an office with ambulances coming through, the same access point would not work for this property. There are going to be two distinct businesses for this, so we felt the two entrances was needed. From a water standpoint, there'll be a 2-inch copper service running. There'll be municipal water for this project. There'll be fire protection as well. There'll be a 4-inch ductile iron cement line fire service provided to the building. For storage, due to the grade drop in this site, we'll be using a Environmental One ejector pump for sewage. That's standard if you can't get gravity flow for a system. Construction details have been provided, and the city engineer has reviewed those. As far as site drainage, it was tricky with the drop. This abuts the landfill into the rear. There was a wetland that was flagged by Arrow Environmental LLC. All our work will be outside the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland area. We did perform soil testing on this site to the rear of the property. It's all sand, beautiful sand. So it's good for recharging the underlying soils with our drainage system. The drainage system meets all DEP stormwater standards. We're providing a 2-foot separation from the bottom of our recharge area to the groundwater table. There'll be deep sump catch basins. There'll be oil sediment separators into Caltech units. The 2, 10, and 25-year storm event will be totally recharged on site. There'll be no runoff associated with those storm events. For the 100-year storm event, I provided an emergency overflow from the Caltex to drain to the lower areas of the lot. But in all cases, I've reduced the post-development runoff rate from the pre, and a full drainage analysis was submitted to the city. So that covers the site plan. I did want to note for the snow stockpiling areas, we're going to have 2 separate snow stockpiling areas. There'll be one for the upper lot, one for the lower lot. Each one, there's plenty of size, and I have provided a landscaping plan, and it should be noted that all the plantings associated with this project are outside any of the snow stockpiling areas. One thing I wanted to note, due to the grade changes and us not wanting to exceed an 8% slope on the entrance to the ambulance service, Dave actually entered into an agreement, which he has a copy of tonight, with the abutter, who is actually a Chelmsford resident. This property is right on the Chelmsford-Lowell line, to allow grading into the abutting property to reduce the need for retaining walls, at least a large portion of retaining walls that would be needed. On the landscaping plan, you'll note that we're showing a large amount of plantings that will be evergreen plantings in nature that will be 6 foot high when planted. So not only will that area be graded on the grading and utility plan, you'll see the extent of the grading onto the neighbor's property, but there'll also be extensive landscaping so that a permanent type buffer will be installed. So in place of a fence, we're just looking to do evergreen plantings like every 10 feet, 6 feet high when planted. And Dave does have a copy of that agreement with him here tonight. And from your previous hearing, I heard the discussions on the landscaped islands. We have provided landscaped islands, even though this isn't an industrial area. So there'll be no variances required from any zoning requirements. We have the landscaped islands. We have proper setbacks from the parking areas to property lines. And we really tried, in planning this site, both Jim, myself, and Dave, we sat down ahead of time and tried to figure out how best to situate this building to get the parking in place with the mixed use, trying to provide the separate entrances. I think we've done a pretty good job, but I'll turn it over to Jim so he can go over some of the building details and go over the site rendering.
Thanks, Jack. Jim Jazokis, architect on this project. The intent of this project is to house ambulances that will be not used for emergency purposes. So the concept of the storage down below are for ambulances that will be sent out on almost like a taxi service. Dave can elaborate.
Expensive
further.
one.
Very expensive.
No, non-emergent medical transportation.
Right. So there's no rush to get out of the facility. As you see on the site plan, there's a very long road, a driveway to get up to the main street and out. Therefore, so that there won't be any sirens, there won't be any vehicles shooting out of here, and that allowed us to have the parking underneath down below, so we're not requiring the ambulances to shoot right out onto the street. This would be a situations where Dave knows ahead of time, well within advance, 24 even 2 weeks in advance of when these people need to be brought from a nursing home over to a hospital and then back and forth, or trips from picking somebody up from the airport that had fallen ill or whatever overseas and then bringing them to the hospital as well.
Jim, I have a picture showing the sight line there too. That's a good,
Okay.
wide open sight line. I'll just show to the board.
Sure. Okay. Now, the building itself is oriented north, south, east, west, and each elevation has been coordinated with the cellar orientation. So the northern side, there's not a heck of a lot of windows. It's also considered the back of the building. This will be well insulated. And then the front of the building has large overhangs with great large windows to help keep it cool in the summer and allow sun to penetrate through the large windows in the wintertime to increase the solar gain to help reduce the necessity of the heating system. So the second floor is set up so it's strictly office space. And the building itself is indicative of a warehouse-style building with a little pizzazz to give it a little extra look for that light industrial area that it's in. And with that said, to pass it back to Dave or over to the board.
The only thing they'll probably have the comments on it was with regard to the comment from the city engineers, a couple things. I think it was the traffic enforcement gentleman that indicated he was looking for an access point from the lower parking lot to the upper parking lot. Yeah. Somehow that escaped us, and so we're going to put it in a set of stairs that's in that wall to access the upper parking lot from the lower parking lot. The other thing as we proceed here, you know, during this whole, I've actually had my business up at 225 Stebbins Street for the last, I think it's 6 years now. And all along that street, if it's not industrial now, it's gonna be. It's all, even Mr. Bell next door, who's in Chelmsford, is a residential. He has his house there for the last 40 years. His house is on light industrial. Across the street is light industrial. 98% of the traffic on there is car traffic. You're pulling into a parking lot and going in there. Mr. Mayo had requested sidewalks on the property, and I'm just putting out before the board, the fact that the foot traffic is almost non-existent. Two, we're not looking at a pedestrian area. It's an industrial area. I've never seen anyone walking up the street. Secondly, just in Chelmsford recently, they put in a condo, 16-unit condo, which is two lots down from this. And even at and it's a residential project, it was zoned light industrial. Chelmsford didn't even make them put sidewalks in. From the bridge all the way down to Stebbins Street on both sides of the road on Stedman Street, there are no sidewalks. The engineer noted that on Old Canal Place across the street, which is a street that runs perpendicular to Stedman, there are some islands and some sidewalks, but again, that's not on Stedman Street. Secondarily, if you look, I provided some pictures. Even if the city were to come up with the funds to try to do this and try to meet my development, you know, that's all the way up the top of the street. I don't know how they do it anyways, because if you look at the telephone poles, I was looking at them today, they're supposed to be set 5 feet back, but I see some of them are 2 to 3 feet off the road. So I don't know how they ever put sidewalks in anyway. So for 2 reasons, basically, more or less the fact that it's a light industrial zone, and 2, that I don't think they could, if they ever come up with the money to do it, which in these financial times is a tough. They can't even fix the ones that they have on, you know, on Andover Street, because I walk it all the time. I don't understand how. I don't see the need. That's my personal opinion. So I'd request the board to ask to withdraw that request. That's all from me.
Thank you. If you have nothing else to say, I'll turn it over to the public at this point in time, and if you have any questions, we'll address them through you. Okay? Thank you. Anybody here like to speak in favor of the project? Anybody here in favor? Yes, sir. Just come to the microphone. Just state your name and address for the record. Can you come up here, please? The people at home who are watching can't hear it, okay? Just state your name and address.
I'm Fred Bell, 150 Stedman Street. I'm the abutter.
Okay.
And they're doing a good job, and they're good people to work with.
Okay. So he's addressed any concerns you have, sir, when you spoke with Mr. Daly?
Yes, he has.
Okay. I mean, he indicated he gave us an agreement here tonight. Basically, he says that he'll backfill and grade the properties, and he'll landscape the trees for you. He will put the permanent boundaries and everything in. You have no problem with that?
No problem whatsoever.
So you have no concerns with this project, even though you're right next to it?
Nope.
Okay.
The only thing I liked was the trees that he's putting in. Give me some privacy back.
Sure. Right. So you're happy with the landscape, the way he's proposed to landscape it, sir?
Huh?
You're happy with the way he proposes to landscape the project?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Anything else you want us to consider, sir?
No, he's a gentleman, and I like working with him so far, so.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Excuse
We
me,
appreciate
Fred.
your input.
Fred, could you just sign in the sign-in sheet there? So that
Mr. Bell, they're just asking if you can sign on the sign-in sheet, because we put that into the minutes who spoke, if you would, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I don't want to spell your name wrong.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing no further people to speak in favor, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Would anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. This time I'll turn it over to any questions or concerns any of the board members have.
I have a couple.
Mr. Lockhart, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
First of all, you have a really nice project here. It's a great-looking building, and it's an asset to the area. I just have a couple of quick things. There's a note in here from DPD about minimizing the removal of large trees, particularly in the southwest corner, I think. Can you just comment on tree removal and what you're gonna leave?
Right, and I don't think you're looking to take this one tree out, Dave, but right in the corner here, and it's actually graphically shown on sheet 3 of 8. It's within the public right-of-way. It's probably a 54 or 60-inch tree.
Yeah.
Dave, you have no intention of taking that
No,
out?
with all due respect, as what I've told Mr. Fred, that he's been there for 40 or 50 years. I already told him the other day that he's been there. He's the primary occupant, if you ask me. So I'm going to go about what he would like. And one of the things that he requested the other day was do some pines where we started the grade. And if he wants us to keep the tree, then we'll keep it. If he wants us to take it down, we'll take it down. Obviously, it's the discretion of the board as well. But he's been there for a lot longer than I have. So.
Right, and with that tree, if you look at the site plan, you can see how I configured the entrance. Instead of running straight out, which would remove the tree, I came out and put a bend so that I'd stay away from the tree and the root system. So there was a conscious effort to maintain that
Yeah,
tree.
good, okay, that's important.
If I actually, that might address that a little bit. I was actually
Yeah, go ahead.
referring to, there's a stand of trees at the southwestern corner, at the tip of the property. I don't know if it's on the property or on the butter's property, but there's several large trees, large caliper trees. And I don't know, I just didn't, the question I guess was more about, were they gonna be taken down due to the grading? Because I know you're gonna grade into the adjacent property.
They're on his land.
Okay, that's
Everything
fine. I
that's
just-
been taken down is we're all done taking down trees, so it's,
Okay.
so,
And just to,
they're all, it's most, actually, everything else is left is on his land.
right, and just so you know, Aaron, in that triangular back section, that's within the 100-foot buffer zone. So our limit of work is that we're not going into the 100-foot. So
Okay.
Dave really can't go in and take trees down or do regrading. That's why I needed to put walls in those areas, so we wouldn't grade off into that treed area.
Okay.
Okay, another question, the water utility, it signed off on this with some requests? You
Yeah,
familiar with what they're saying
they just
there?
wanted to note that there's gonna be when we tap, the service is gonna be, we're not gonna piggyback the domestic service into the fire service. So we'll do a 2-inch tap into the 8-inch main, we'll do probably 6-inch tap for the fire suppression system. 2 different taps.
Yeah, all right, that's what he's suggesting. And I just want to make a comment about the sidewalks, too. I would support a motion or whatever is required to, not require them here. I don't think that the whole length of Stedman Street is, it's an industrial zone, and it's car and truck traffic, and it's
Yeah.
not pedestrian traffic.
Exactly.
I don't think they're appropriate there, just.
And just to, I spoke to Dave to make sure my memory was correct, but when we had our pre-filing submission, I brought up to Aaron at the end if any department comments had come back, and my main thing was to see if they would require sidewalks or curbing, and I remember the board and Aaron said usually it's only in cases where there's a gap in sidewalks, like along Stedman, there are no sidewalks.
Right.
So that's what we were kind of looking for some feedback during the pre-application as well.
Yeah, along the street, I would, no, I don't. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Mr. Gentleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said that there was 28 parking spaces required for the
Yep.
facility. How did we come to that calculation? I've been crunching some numbers here, and I can't figure out how we got to 28. Do you know?
There's a summary table presented on sheet 3 of 8. Right below the zoning table, there's an off-street parking table. And basically, there's a calculation there that shows how we
Okay.
get to the
All right,
28.
That makes sense. So you have, your half of the building is considered vehicle warehouse, 1 space per 1,600 square feet, and the other half is office space, 1 for
Correct.
400. Okay.
And one thing to note, like I know like on a residential project, if you have an enclosed garage, you can count those spaces towards your parking total. We didn't do that. So when we're showing we need 28, we're not taking any credit for the parking
vehicles are
inside the
housed
ambulance. Because
inside.
in reality, the employees are going to be parking outside.
Okay. So, you need, for the office space, which is on the first floor, you need 20 spaces, essentially. And right now you have, on that first level, you have 17 spaces.
Correct.
Yep.
Would it be possible to provide some type of access to the lower parking lot from the upper parking lot, so that if there was spillover in that top lot, that they maybe could use some of the spots and not have to climb all the way back up the hill?
Yep, sorry, you want to take this? Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave hit on this earlier, but one of the comments from DPD was the same comment you're having, in that a stairway will be added in this area, which makes sense. We had talked about that in our applications, and then it was left off this plan, but that makes sense, especially where Dave's going to own both businesses as well. If his guys need to get, just for anyone moving back
Sure.
and forth, we're going to add a set of stairs in this area here.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, that's great. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gentleman. Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, first, I really have to comment, this is a light industry zone, and you've taken the time to incorporate everything we're looking for, and this is probably a better plan than a lot of spaces that come to us, sites that come to us in a more visible retail or residential zone, so I have to commend you for that. I think even the architectural design of the building for light industry is going to add to the area. And I appreciate, again, we don't leave anybody off balance. You know, the landscaping is important, the visual aspect of that, and you've incorporated that into this design as well. So I really have to congratulate you for all of that. Just a couple questions, and I believe the traffic engineer, and just so I understand regarding the dumpster, and I don't, if he felt, and I'm assuming when you designed this, you felt that a disposal truck could get down there and access that fine? I mean, I didn't...
That was my idea. I didn't want to put a dumpster on the upper parking lot.
Right.
Because it would be visible, you know what, so I wanted to put it down and back, and my idea is a trash truck could come in, turn here, and then back right up to where the dumpster pad is and empty.
Right.
Empty. The problem is, I guess, if there was anyone parked in space 23 or 24, maybe it would be a little bit difficult to maneuver. But I really didn't think so. It's,
what is the size of the dumpster? It's only a small.
It's what, a 15-yard dumpster, so it's probably 10 by 10.
Yeah, I showed a 10 by 10 conch pad, so.
8 by 8 or something, I think it is.
Yeah, I think a dumpster is 8 by 8, but I have a 10 by 10 pad shown. But that was my idea. I wanted to keep it. If I put it up here, I mean, it's going to be fenced anyways, but I didn't want it to be up.
Yeah, no, I like the
upper
idea
lot.
of having it down there.
Yeah.
And as I looked at the plan, I thought it would be sufficient, but I was curious as to, you know, your thoughts on the comment here and explaining how you feel that it would be sufficient. Because
I understand how DPD came up with that comment, but based on the movement, I don't see a problem emptying the dumpster. I mean, it's a little bit difficult with the retaining walls and the grading. We're kind of maxed out for parking spaces. I'd hate to take one of my parking spaces up for a dumpster space.
Sure.
And I think it would be something that could work.
And I'm assuming, Mr. Daly, you'll have some control over the timing of that, if that was some sort of an issue
With the dumpster?
with the dumpster?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, you've got adequate snow storage. I'm really pleased to see that. When I was looking at the elevations, are you going to be at the same elevation, or will there be retaining walls between this site and the abutting site where there's the existing commercial units to the right? Is that...
Yeah, you're right. We're basically, from the rear of the building back, there will be a new retaining wall. There's an existing block wall there now. It's just large concrete blocks. There'll be another retaining wall. That's way up here. Dave's going to need another wall that's maybe 6 feet lower than that onto his property. That's one of the things, that where the property line is, I don't have the rights to
go in there,
go into their area to do anything differently. So it'll almost give a terraced wall look. I mean, this block wall is nothing to look at if you've seen it.
Yeah, well, I know, I was out there.
Yeah, so, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's horrible.
it'll give it a terrace look, and there wasn't many options I had. I couldn't try to go onto the other property.
Right.
And the way Jim designed the architecture on this, the building itself is going to serve as the wall, and everything will grade off into the building. But when we get back to the parking, and in order to maintain like the 8% and get all the grading to work, I needed the wall on this side.
Okay. Now, how much face are you going to have? How large is that wall going to be? How high is that going to be?
In the section we're talking about, it's about a 6-foot-high wall.
Okay.
In the largest, the high, I should say, the highest wall at any point on the site is 10 feet.
10 feet.
So what in the only way, that's why I went 8%.
Yep.
Going back, and I tried to balance. So the worst case, I think, is right in this area. No, that's 4 feet. And I tried to terrace some things. I have a retaining wall here, but then I'm going to have like a planting area for Dave and then a Versalock wall to wrap around. So I tried to take anything that was a high wall and try to give it a terrace effect, and then provide some like landscaping in between where Dave could do some mulch beds or something different. So to break up just having a 10-foot wall looking at you.
Now, I notice you've got enough space, because there's no real fencing or anything. I'm just looking at this upper parking lot. Although you're going to have, is that going to be granite What are you
No.
going to use to define that?
Along the building, where the 5-foot concrete walkway is, there'll be cement concrete curbing. In all other areas, it's going to be bituminous berm.
Okay, berm.
It'll be a Cape Cod berm, low reveal, like a 4-inch reveal, which the city engineer was okay.
Yeah.
In talking with the city engineer on past projects, she likes the vertical granite when it's in the public right of way.
Right.
But then for this type of project, but I didn't want to do asphalt along the whole thing, along the face of the building. I wanted to do it with the concrete.
Looks
It
nicer
works
with the
better
concrete, yeah.
with the walkways and the handicap ramps and everything else we need.
Okay, that's all I have right now, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Bichette. Mr. Claremont?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on a couple of points from the engineering department, in the comment letter that she sent to us, retaining walls must be designed, stamped by a professional engineer, and you've done that. And she's noted new construction development calls for new sidewalks, and I agree with my colleagues that it's probably not an appropriate place for, put a sidewalk just in front of your area. It'd probably be difficult, one, for a plow coming by if there's all of a sudden a sidewalk in your area, nowhere else. So I would agree that that probably should be waived. The other items that she had on her list, sewer manhole on private property calls for an inside drop connection. Applicants should consider a 5-inch diameter manhole minimum if using internal drop.
That makes sense.
Okay, is that on your plan? Is that going to be done?
It will be done.
Okay. And she references the agreement between the property owners should, 1, include runoff from infiltration overflow, and 2, be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And I assume that she's talking about the agreement between yourself and Mr. Bell. To my understanding, that agreement encompasses the fact that you'll be doing some grading, you'll be doing some landscaping between the properties, and then you'll be done.
Yep.
You'll have no more involvement with Mr. Bell's property once you're
Correct.
done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So in terms of include runoff from infiltration overflow, do you know what that refers to?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do, but I'm a little stymied by that one. The overflow is on the northerly side of the property. It's going to outlet through the wall and then drain off to this back area. If anything, if you look at the existing contours on this property and how it drains, I'm actually, with the berm, I'm capturing all the runoff that comes this way and piping it to my recharge area. So if anything, I'm reducing the amount of runoff that's going to go onto the abutting property.
Okay.
So I didn't quite understand. I'm not increasing flow rates. Yet, I mean, there will be a slope there, and there will be drainage that falls from the retaining wall this way, but all the water that used to move this way is no longer going to go that way.
All right. So you're not anticipating any infiltration or overflow into Mr. Bell's property?
Correct.
Okay. As far as the agreement where it's going to be completed, I don't see any need that it be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, because once it's done, it's done.
I get a question. You know, doing a number of developments in the city that called out for stormwater management with the new regulations, I understand that, you know, basically more or less, if you build something, you own the water on it. And so that in tune lies with the fact that the new stormwater management indicating infiltration systems, which I've always done, which is called out for this. But the new, having to have to record that at the registry, is that a new policy? I don't.
No, there's no policy to have a stormwater management report recorded with the registry. It's a requirement of the zoning code that all projects has to meet the Mass state regulations, and it's something we deal with at the planning board level. I think all that Lisa was trying to do is that this agreement be recorded.
Okay.
And I don't know if she was necessarily concerned about the runoff, that being recorded, because that's going to be dealt with at this point. I think her concern was more that your agreement is solidified.
Sure,
With the applicant, and it's up to the board. I mean, I think, I agree, once it's done, once you do the work, once you grade it and plant the trees, I don't see you going to be out there with a backhoe taking it out 4 weeks later.
Just one real quick question along those same lines. Previously, the city would ask for an easement, I'd grant an easement to access the actual infiltration system. They don't do that. They don't ask them for that anymore?
Well, I don't think, Lisa didn't call it out as an issue. That's typically more with the retention or detention pond.
Okay.
If that's not being properly maintained.
Okay.
What she does typically, that she mentioned, was that there'd be a yearly maintenance plan that gets recorded with the engineer for an infiltration system. That's something we've seen in the past.
Okay. I think as part of the drainage report, Dave, on my last page in the report, there's an operation and maintenance plan, and it calls out for when you're supposed to do certain things with the system. Clean catch basins, sweep the parking lot, things like that, to try to maintain the stormwater system.
Sure.
And I think our last comment is grinder pump should have a 5-inch cover, 5-foot cover, rather.
Yep. I can do that.
That's awesome. Okay. All right, I have no other comments.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Claremont. I just have a couple of questions. One, from the traffic engineer, talked about the driveway. I wasn't sure if you addressed this, Mr. Sullivan, or not, if I missed it. The northerly driveway should be closed with access via removing parking space 5, cutting back the retaining wall, and introducing more grading. You know what Mr. Gomes means by that? I'm not sure.
I see the point in that. Parking space 5 is this space here.
Okay.
So the idea is if I could take that back and provide more green area, then so be it. But in this case, I can't lose a parking space.
Okay.
I only have 28 spaces, so.
I think what he was actually addressing was going back to having a single curb cut.
Oh, okay.
And having access to the upper parking lot off of that, was it the southern curb cut?
Yes.
I think that's what he was addressing, but I think you guys have noted that you want to have separation between the two, and I guess that's something the board, but I think that's what he was.
Just so DPD, we did look at doing the single
Yeah.
curb cut, but it didn't make sense with the two uses. If it was one use for this property, it might make sense, but with the two separate uses, it
I
seemed to
think
make
his
sense.
concern comes down to an access management issue, and it's not really a problem on the side, I would perceive, but typically on a travel corridor, you want to reduce the number of curb cuts if possible, so that you're not getting these issues of cars trying to enter the street at the same time and being relatively close. I mean, that's what, 30, 40 feet apart. It's not going to be a huge issue. But anytime possible, it's good to eliminate or reduce the number of curb cuts to a street, because that slows traffic. It creates additional congestion. But again, I don't think the traffic engineer perceived this as a traffic problem so much as an opportunity, if possible.
Right,
Thank
'cause
you,
we did request a waiver on the traffic study as well, in our submission, and we didn't see any comments back from the
Yeah,
city's traffic consultant.
He didn't see any for one.
Okay.
And just backing up a little bit, I know Jack and Jim touched on how the building's gonna look, and the building's gonna look really nice. I think, Jack, you said at the beginning of your presentation, you had it facing a certain direction where there's no windows, and there were some other windows to pick up the green effect.
That would be Jim.
Yeah, could you just go over that briefly again? Sure. I know you touched on the preliminary hearing too, and we're kind of impressed by that. I know that's a lot of stuff that cities and towns are looking at now.
Right. If you're familiar with the Robinson School, the gymnasium has a band of cow wall up top, which is a dense fiber insulation that not only allows light to filter in, it also has a very high insulation value. And that's kind of what we're proposing in the rear of the building, and having high transom windows. So you're getting natural light coming in from a northern side. You're providing security because it's the back of the building, and you're also providing a very high insulation. The idea is to utilize the technology that is no different than taking aluminum foil, wrapping a shoebox, taking a hot dog and putting saran wrap over the top, sticking it out in the middle of the parking lot in the dead of winter and cooking a hot dog in an hour. That's the exact same principle that we're applying here. And we're allowing the sun to filter through large windows in the wintertime, because the sun is lower, you get a better angle. And so they'll be filtering in through this entire front, as well as these large areas here. But as the warmer days approach in July, August, the sun gets higher orientation, so these large overhangs and the whole walkway in the front provide shade for these windows. So no longer is the sun beating into the building. It's stopping on those roofs. So,
Thank you, that's, I mean, I know you touched on it before, I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty nice. I mean, the way how you're addressing that area with the
Right.
green issue coming up now.
The,
and
the passive
I know
solar
we've had a
gain-
training on some of that in-house here,
Right.
and how we can try to do it for some of the bigger projects coming before us.
Right.
Something like that, I can really see it put the work for you.
The technology, I went to Arizona State, and we had a field of 2 miles by 2 miles right next to campus that had the solar panels, but out there you had maybe 2 cloudy days.
Right,
And
yeah.
people don't realize in Boston, we get more rain than Seattle.
Mhm.
So we, to use solar panels as a viable source is not economical at this point. I talked to engineers and recently did a school where they, the recoup is about 60 years on putting it in. But if you utilize the passive solar gain, which is not using the solar panels, it's just glass, and it's a very simple construction. It's just a better way to go. And I was talking to Aaron earlier, and wind and passive solar gain is the better in this area, in my opinion, so.
Thank you, I appreciate
There's
that.
a couple other things too. We're going to do all 2x6 construction. Obviously, the standard is 2x4. It's actually going to be mostly a wood building. There's going to be steel incorporated. The other thing is going to do radiant floors in the warehouse part, and a series of The windows are going to be all energy efficient windows. Every project I've done it on is unbelievable how much it's cut down on the energy use. In my own personal residence, it's unbelievable. With a lot of windows and good construction methods, it cuts it in half.
Just a couple of other comments I'd like to make is, it's nice to see how you're building something in a light industrial zone. We don't have a lot of those left in the city that we're really pushing it for. We don't see a lot of development on those, and we'd like to see that development stay in the city. I know you're right on the city line, so it's nice to see it in the city of Lowell. I agree basically too with the sidewalks. I understand where division of development is coming with, planning development is coming with the sidewalks. I was up there looking at the site just yesterday afternoon. I know nobody else has the sidewalks. But just as a question, how much would a sidewalk cost to put in for the development of that nature? I mean, I don't know what it would cost to put one in. I'm just trying to think what type of cost factor you'd be looking at if you put in the sidewalk with the curb,
Right.
granite curb.
Just so you know, like vertical granite curbing
Right.
with a 6-inch reveal, 6 inches wide, it runs you about $28 a foot just for the curbing to install that. And then they'd want cement concrete sidewalks. Those run, geez, I mean, how much is your site frontage, Dave? Let's see. I mean, I think it would end up adding probably like $15,000 to $20,000 in cost, because he has a good amount of site frontage. We're also talking about that 54-inch tree, you know what I mean, which is right at the edge of pavement, but that's where your curb line would go. There may have to be some things relocated, like hydrants, things like that.
So
But
you're talking a substantial cost to put in.
it's
for
a
street that
substantial
doesn't have
cost.
any
Even
side-
at $30 a foot for the vertical granite curbing, it's probably $6,000 just for the curb costs. Forget the sidewalks and everything else. So it is substantial.
Right, yeah. I mean, I can understand if there was some up there and you in the middle of it, and it was on both sides. I mean, obviously, I could see the criteria. I know the idea is to try to make it throughout the city, you know, with Stedman Street being commercial, light industrial, not being residential. Obviously, it's more wanted in the residential area. And I know a lot of times we're a lot more strict when it comes to the residential area because it has the use of pedestrian traffic, which is the main concern. I'm saying that, I like the size of your building. I know your major concern, well, the hardest part was look at the slope. I mean, I saw it on the plan, then you go up there and look at it, and even with the project to the right, when I tried to drive down, I stopped and get out and looked at the sign that was posted for tonight's meeting, because you do have a pretty good grade there, but I think you've done a good job of building up the grade, how you broke it up into different patterns, and how you're putting a lot of it down below grade and bringing it right up, so you really worked your site into the grade, so I give you credit for that, because looking at it, you can tell it's a difficult site to work with.
I've been telling Dave that.
Tell him that.
You know, by looking at it, you know, you can look at percentages and this and that, but when you really go see it, you say, wow.
Right.
Yeah, we already
give you
brought up
credit
the
for
grade a
working on
lot,
that, I
probably
really do.
3 or 4 feet.
Yeah.
It's going to continue.
But, those are the comments I have, so, thank you. Having said that, any of the board members have any further questions or concerns? No. If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the site plan with conditions, and the conditions I'd suggest is, one, that the applicant comply with the comments of the water department, as they said that they will. And with regard to the engineering comments, that they comply with the comments regarding the sewer manhole and the grinder pump. In addition, that they'll be adding that stairway to connect the two parking lots, as they indicated earlier. And finally, comply with the agreement that was submitted this evening with Mr. Bell. We'll take that as part of the record.
Any further discussion on the motion?
We need a statement in there relative to sidewalks? Or can we just
Do you want to put that under a waiver?
Yeah, we could put that,
waive the
it's,
sidewalk?
request of the board that the sidewalk be waived in this case.
Yeah, and I'll second that then.
Okay. Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any against? Hearing none? Yeah. Matter is approved. 5 in favor, none against. Good luck.
Thank you very
We wish
much.
well with your project.
Buck.
That's a nice project.
Thank you.
I need a minute.
That's gonna look nice. Moving along, that does complete our public hearings. However, we do have some matter under old business. On old business, we have 108 Pine Street, which is the Morey School. The planning board will be taking up a review of updated plans for the Morey School project located at 108 Pine Street. The site plan was approved during the planning board meeting on April 19th, 2007, with the condition that the dumpster and service entrance be moved from its originally proposed location on Morey Street to the front of the dumpster on Pine Street near the cafeteria. The board will review the updated plans, which meets with the intent of the condition placed on the approval. In our packet, Aaron was kind enough to give us the approval that we did make last April, and for our response, to have any questions on that, what the conditions are. So we do have a copy of those minutes for tonight's agenda. And so the main issue here tonight is the applicant has received the approval at a public hearing. Now it's come back in to see if they can modify one of the conditions that we did put on the project in regards to the dumpster and the service entrance. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Hi, yes. My name is John Haley. I'm with Watermark. We're the owner's project manager for the City of Lowell for the Morey School. I have Jay Williams here from Flansburgh, the architect, Jay Lane from the Lowell School Department, and Dave Blazon from the Department of Public Works. I've handed out in front of you responses to all the conditions that were in the original letter we received from you, just to identify that we have addressed or are addressing all of the conditions listed there. We have looked at a number of different options with regards to the dumpster. We've come up with one we think should work for everyone, and I'm going to let Jay Williams just run you through that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Last time we were here, this is the design that you saw. You commented on it and asked us to look into relocating the dumpster around the front of the school.
Nope, nope, she's saying the mic's not on,
Mic's
please,
not
okay.
on.
Is the green light on there? Okay. It is. Okay, thank you.
In trying to put the dumpster on the front of the school here, it's a very tight swath of property that's available before you get into the parking. So we couldn't find a way to fit it into that area without altering the parking and reducing the number of parking spaces. At the same time, the main entry to the school is up in this area here. And there was a concern about having the dumpster that close to the main entry to the school. This is the front of the school right here. One of the other issues was that I've heard that there have been issues with gas meters and their relative location to dumpsters here in the city. So that was also a concern that we tried to address with the redesign. This redesign here, what we did is we did keep it on the Morey Street side of the site, hoping that the intent of what you were asking for was to try to increase the screening and to make it a little more presentable without losing the effect at the front of the school here. We are intending to use composite acoustical panels on the front of it. Previously, we had a fence around it, around the generator enclosure and around the dumpster enclosure. And these acoustical panels will help isolate the sound of the generator when that's tested periodically. We reoriented the dumpster enclosure. At one point, we had tried to turn it parallel to the street to try to completely isolate it, but that became problematic in terms of getting the dumpsters to actually pull in and take the trash away. We've increased all the plantings around it. There are junipers, arborvitaes, and ivy that'll be planted at the base of the walls. The cafeteria is right here. All the trash from the building will come out this door. So again, another reason for not moving it all the way around here, trying to make it convenient for the people using the dumpster.
Anything further? No?
No, that's it.
Mr. Chairman?
Anybody else want to speak on behalf of this moving of the dumpster, sir? Anything else you want to say, or anybody with you? Okay. No. Okay. Any of the board members have any questions at this time? Go ahead, Mr. General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that some kind of a fence or a gate you have in front of the dumpster?
Yes, it is.
So it closes?
It would be completely enclosed.
It's completely enclosed for the majority of the time?
Yes.
The only time it gets opened is when it needs to be emptied?
Correct, or something placed in it.
There's no way for somebody to access that, somebody throwing something into the dumpster can't access that from another way other than going through the front gate?
Correct.
Any way you could incorporate something so somebody could walk into that enclosure? You know, if you got to throw out some boxes or something, that way you wouldn't have to open it up to the street.
Maybe add another gate here or something?
Yeah.
A man gate?
Yeah, a man gate, so that somebody can just walk in and throw something into the dumpster without opening the enclosure.
Yeah, we could do that.
Steve, you mean more like a pedestrian gate instead of just a truck gate?
So the janitor has something he wants to throw out, he doesn't have to open the big gate.
Makes sense.
A small open gate?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And let's see, I had another question. How many times how often is the dumpster emptied? Do we know?
2 or 3 times a week.
2 or 3 times a week? Okay. So the only time that dumpster gets exposed to the street is the 2 or 3 times when they come to empty it for maybe 15 minutes or something like that. And if you add another gate, a man gate, so somebody can get in there to throw something out, we won't even have to open it up then.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any of the board members have any further questions? Mr. Fischette?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and please forgive me, but if you can indulge me a little bit, because I know this isn't posted for a public hearing, and when the public was here before, and I felt strongly about this, is you've got some residential homes right across the street, and it was, I mean, let's face it, this is the city doing this, and trying not to locate those dumpsters right across from those homes, and I can appreciate the sound barriers, and I think Mr. Jennen had a very good point, because from a practical application, I could see that those gates would stay open, because for somebody from the kitchen to run out and open those big gates every time they want to throw something back there, so, you know, before you came back to us with this proposal, because quite frankly, I feel like we're stuck with it, and I'm not happy about that. What was the biggest problem trying to locate it where we had originally said? I know you mentioned you were going to lose some parking spaces, or what? Because I think when we had discussed this logistically from the location of the cafeteria within the building, it appeared that this was going to be feasible, and I'm just, for my own peace of mind, would like to know why it's not feasible and why we're coming back with basically putting it in the original location.
Two reasons. One, once we got into the details of it, the distances required, turning radius and such, relative to the parking lot just didn't work. And the second reason being that from I guess, from an aesthetic standpoint and from a from the standpoint of the entering the building, there was a desire not to have it adjacent to the entry, to the main entry of the school.
No, I don't have any further.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Have you, any of the neighbors up there seen what you proposed here? Have you talked with them at all?
Could you just go up to the microphone first? We don't pick it up to people at home. Okay, just tell us your name for the record if you would, please.
Dave Blazon, Department of Public Works, Deputy Commissioner. I actually visited with Donna Cox, who works in the Health Department, who's one of the abutters across the street, and went over the plans with her and showed her everything that we were planning. And she seemed to be in full agreement with it, you know, and she said if she had anything else, she'd just show up tonight. So.
Okay, I just think it's important to get the neighborhood input there, because that was one of my main concerns before, is just the visibility of all that stuff, and that's important. Do you plan any outside lighting there that might filter across the street?
Yes, I believe there are light fixtures on the surface of the building here, either on the surface or believe there's a soffit here.
Yeah.
There may be downlights there.
Okay. And that dumpster could be scheduled at some odd hour maybe, so that it's not at 6 o'clock in the morning waking everybody up and stuff like that. I'm sure you could control that.
I think he's saying, basically, you know, what time the dumpster will be picked up. You know, you don't want to do it to be disruptive to the neighborhood, you know. Question, I mean, maybe if you want to do it after school hours, maybe, might be more appropriate. If you do it after school hours, the benefit you get there is you get the trash pickup of the whole day, and then you don't get any traffic
Right.
issues with people coming and going to the school.
Yeah,
So I'm
exactly.
thinking if you do later in the afternoon, after school was closed, I know you have activities going on, but say if you do between maybe 3 or 4, I'm just thinking out loud here, you know, you're not going to affect the neighbors early in the morning, not going to affect the school traffic coming and going, plus, you know, I know what the school hours usually consist of, but you still also have students who may be running tardy from doctor's appointments, illnesses, early pickup, early dismissal, half-days over certain holidays, so maybe if the pickup was done late in the afternoon, any problem with that?
I don't know the exact pickup schedule now, but we'd certainly coordinate that with the neighbors if it was a concern. From the school department's perspective, the two biggest issues trying to relocate that dumpster to the Maury Street side is where it was going to be placed aesthetically was right next to the front door of the building, and we were trying to really make a clean up and make that appearance as nice as possible, and you would literally be walking into the front door with the dumpster right next to you. The other issue was the service door being on the side. If the dumpster was in the front, you would actually have all of your trash, say during lunch periods and things like that, coming right up the main corridor of the building, coming out the main doors to go to the dumpster. At the same time, parents and guests and kids could be coming into the facility. So it just logistically didn't work well. And where the service entrance, where all the custodial and cafeteria people would be coming and going to throw things away, where that's on the side of the building, I think our wish was that it be somehow located on the side, dressed up in a way so that it's agrees with the neighborhood. And certainly work with them around pickup and drop-off schedules, things like that sort. But being right at the front door of the building just didn't work for us.
Go ahead, Vic.
All right, just one other quick question. Can you just comment on the color and texture of the barrier? And do you plan on planting like vines on that, like I saw in one of the illustrations? Can you decorate that with plantings to?
That's what we intend to do, yes.
Okay,
The
so do
the
that.
composite panels, we can get them in various shades. We'll get something that complements the building, plant the ivy right at the base of the wall and let it climb right up, so eventually it'll turn green.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Claremont?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the same materials then that you're using to screen the generator will be used to screen the dumpster too, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And how high is that screening wall around the dumpster?
10 feet.
Okay, so that'll be totally, you won't be able to see that at all?
Correct.
All right. And is there plantings around that? Is that what I'm seeing there?
This is showing some bollards around it, just so that the dumpster, when it gets put back down, doesn't push into the wall.
Right, okay.
But there are plantings that unfortunately we didn't show them on this drawing.
Okay, the plantings are where, though?
Where
would they be?
They're from here out.
Okay.
The junipers basically go from here down the street. Arborvitae are here, and the ivy will be on all the walls.
All right. Your service deliveries, when they're delivering materials or whatever, where do those come in?
Those will come into the same
or
area.
In the same area, so the trucks are basically accessing the same point at all
Correct.
times. Okay. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. I just have a couple of comments. I know when this project came in originally that night, we had two proposals for this school as well as the one on Gorham Street. And I know a lot of the plans weren't in detail at that point in time because the developer at the time didn't want to spend too much money on the plans due to they didn't know which ones the city council or the city of Lowell was going to accept between the two schools, if they were going to accept either one of them. So the detail on the planning was not usually as in detail as we would require. I think that was a couple of the reasons why, if you do look at our motions that night, we tried to make them a little vague, so if any problems came up, to bring the matters back before us, because I know the detail was not spent, because they didn't know if either one of these schools was going to be approved. And therefore, they didn't want to spend the money on the architectural and engineering, designing on plans that may not filter through. And as it turned out, this school got the go-ahead and the other school did not. So I think a lot of the preceptual idea at that point in time, where the cafeteria was going to be, where the service entrance was going to be, was conceptual in nature, and it wasn't really definitive. And I think part of that question was, matter of fact, all 5 board members commented on the dumpster that night. And I know we had some questions about it, and some of the answers were vague at the time. So I think now you've come back with a little more detail, showing where you want to put it, why you want to put it. I know construction's going on as we speak up there on the site now. I think you have a better idea where your layout's going to be. The engineering is more fine-tuned, what's going on that building up there. And now you have a definite idea of where you want to put it and what your reasons are. And I think you're screening it in better than what we saw that night. And now with the service entrance being there, it does make sense. I don't think we had the benefit of knowing exactly. I knew we knew the CAF was going to be there, but we weren't sure where the service entrance was. At least my memory's not 100% sure on that. But coming back now and showing us that project, I'm more comfortable with it being there due to the fact it's going to be screened properly. I think the board member over here picked up an excellent point. If you just put a gate in there, I don't think that's going to be cost figure for it. But it makes sense instead of, you have a custodian dropping things off barrel by barrel, instead of opening the gate up, leaving the gate closed. If you just put a small, like I say, pedestrian gate to the side, then really you're not going to have that master gate open, and it's not going to be exposed to the neighborhood as well. If you have a couple of times with the pickup in the afternoon, I think that should basically solve your problem. And as long as it's screened properly, which you're showing us now, and it's proper height and everything else, I have no problem with it now. I think most of the concerns I had that night, we're trying to be flexible because we obviously, as board members, we love to see new education come into the school and into these buildings. I mean, that's an old school. I mean, I went there, a long time ago and needed an upgrade then. And obviously, I think our concern was at the time, and I think we all agreed with how it was gonna fix up the park behind there and everything else, and I think all that's gonna come through, and I think it's gonna be a great project, so I wish you well with it. Thank you. Having said that, any of the board members have any further comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion whether we feel that we can.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the relocation of the dumpster with the following conditions: that a man gate be added to allow access to dispose of garbage, that the gates to the dumpster be closed at all times except when the dumpster is being emptied, that plantings be added around the enclosure to enhance the appearance, and that the emptying of the dumpster be scheduled at times that are not sensitive to the neighborhood.
Any further discussion or a second on that motion?
I'd just like to add to the landscaping part of it, that they work with DPD on that, just so it softens the whole thing for the neighborhood. So
Yes, that makes sense.
They'd have some good suggestions.
You have no problem, Mr. Chairman, incorporating
No,
his?
the plantings, that the applicant work with DPD to add plantings that will enhance the appearance.
Now, do you have any questions on what the motions were? Did you correct them all, or do you?
Yeah, I got them all.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I vote, board votes yes. I take it those conditions aren't too harsh on your party, they should be totally acceptable?
Nice, that's
Yeah,
good
that
job.
shouldn't be
I
a
mean,
problem.
basically, as they said, keep the gate locked, basically, and put the little pedestrian gate in, and hopefully it works out well for you.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's
Alrighty,
nice.
thank you very
Wish
much.
you well, good night.
Thank you.
Great, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good job.
Moving along, we have notices from the Bud in Town. Entertain a motion, place them on file.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's placed on file. ZBA notices, we don't have any ZBA notices that come up for public hearing, so we move along on that matter. A couple of things on the general correspondence. I did have a discussion with Adam last week. I know there's been some advertisement in the local paper about a dog park going in the city of Lowell. And I know they want to put it down off the VFW. And with that, what's the address on that, Aaron? I know it's right there by that church, and it's right by the river.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you, I actually don't know the address, but it's if you
It's right
drive on the
near CAP.
VFW,
You know that, I think it's a Nazarene
Yeah,
church there.
there's
They
like a
wanna put it in there.
candy
Right back
cane
of that.
Huh?
sticking out of the
Yeah,
ground,
the
a
candy cane
large
sticking out where the
candy
parking
cane.
is.
There's an old tennis court there.
Yeah, it's right across from Saint.
Yeah, yeah, right across the
The question what Aaron brought to my attention was basically that they think that they're looking to make that the temporary park,
Okay.
right?
That's correct. It's a temporary solution to provide the dog park while they find a more permanent location. And essentially what they just want to do is take that tennis court, turn it into the parking lot for that, and then create a running area for dogs that can be unleashed, and provide some other amenities to people who want to access that.
So
But I'm sorry,
Go
it's
ahead.
just like I think they're looking at a 1 to 2 year solution.
Okay. So the issue came up was Aaron saying, the question was, would we require that they give us the whole complete set of plans, because we will come before us on site plan? And the question was, how much would it cost to put all the plans together? Or would we be willing to have something a little bit more relaxed, since it's gonna be a temporary site and not a definite site? And I said to him, I personally didn't have much of a problem with that. I thought that's something that we should get the input from all the board members, so the matter comes in, you can say, well,
Yeah.
I like it this way, I don't like it that way. And so, so I don't know what the feelings are. That's what Aaron told me. I don't know if you want to explain it any further. I mean, basically, they haven't picked a permanent site yet, right?
No, I don't believe they have. I'm not exactly.
But he says it
up to date on
does
the
fall
project, but-
under our purview for site plan, and the question was how stringent would be on the applicant for the plans to be in detail, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, the kind of plans that would be looking to provide is something that would be just a general site plan, looking where the landscaping is gonna be, there's gonna be an access road created for the parking lot. But the parking lot, the impervious surface of the parking lot's not going to change, or the tennis court, I should say. What we were looking at, the folks at DPT were trying to avoid doing a stormwater management plan. Of course, I suppose the traffic analysis, but just provide perhaps a single sheet that shows what the intent is going to be. It should be fairly detailed in that, where the planting's going to be, what kind of trees you could expect, and other kinds of landscaping. But with respect to any kind of stormwater management or lighting plan, The specific details wouldn't be quite provided at this point.
I think we could just, you know, if everybody just visited the site and just have a very simple block layout, you know. Talk to, that's all we need. I don't
Yeah, I mean,
we
whatever the
need
board's
anything very
discussions are.
sophisticated,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
I
I
know
think,
where it is, I go by it
Go ahead,
every
Steve.
day. yeah.
I think it's something that the city needs, and
Yeah,
I
I
think there's a lot of people who, you know, want a space where they can, you know, let their dogs run for a short period of time. I happen to know some folks who tried to do this and did do it on a regular basis down at the Riley School, and they were good about it. They, you know, cleaned up after their dogs and everything. They didn't do it during school hours, obviously, but they were told they couldn't do it there anymore because, you know, we don't allow dogs to run free on the schools, which, you know, also has merit. But at the same time, I think it makes sense to pursue a project like this in the city, and I think we need it sooner rather than later. So I'd certainly be in favor of looking to put some kind of temporary solution together without going through all of the formal site plan type of work that we do, so that we can get something in place and then down the road maybe look at something that's a little bit more comprehensive.
Jerry, you have any questions or
Yeah,
concerns on
no,
that?
I think that's reasonable from our perspective, sure.
Joe, any questions, concerns? You think
No,
it's?
good idea. Put in a few fire hydrants, we'll be all set.
Okay, so whenever that does come in, you know, basically, we've actually set of plans that they can do it on one or two pieces, if they want to put it all on one. I know
Great.
it's not that big of an area, I forget, I don't know what the square footage is.
I don't even know if it's a full acre, to be honest with you. It's not very large.
I know it's
at this
behind,
point.
there's the CAP, there's a church there, then there's the parking lot, then you go up over the bridge, and there's St.
It's actually a nice location, great view of the river, so,
Yeah.
I mean, probably the best dog park around, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just wanted to make sure that the city went through the same steps that, you know,
Okay.
everybody else has to go through.
On other further comments, I know I'm not available to be here on our next meeting. I don't know if all the board members are going to be present. I know the next date is on April 24th, which is a Thursday night.
Right.
So I know I can't be here, I'll be out of state. I don't know if the other board members are going to be here. I know we don't have any public hearings scheduled for that night. I just don't know if everybody else is going to be here to go forward on the hearing, whether they have a quorum or not. All the other board members going to be here?
I believe that,
You gonna be
yeah,
here?
right now.
I have no plans to be away, but I know that is school vacation week, so it's possible
Oh, is
my
it? Yeah.
plans could
I
change.
mean, so I can't be here, but obviously the board can carry on without me. I did talk to Aaron briefly about this, 'cause I did tell him what I knew a month ago they wouldn't be here. And Aaron, what do you say? We have no public hearings, all right? And we do have one scheduled for the May 5th date, which is the one we saw before on the pre-app in the acre section there with the Rogers School coming back. I mean, not the Rogers, I mean the, what was the school there?
St. Joseph's?
St. Joseph's
On
School.
Merrimack
Oh, yeah.
Street.
Oh, yes.
We saw the grade
Yeah,
school, now we're
yeah.
seeing the high school.
Down the
He
street,
said
yeah.
that's on for the public hearing. He said that's on that night, so I didn't know what the board's intention were, and I didn't know what the board schedule was, so I figured we'd bring that out tonight just to see which way the board members want to go on that.
Yeah,
Do
there's
we have anything
nothing-
on for old business that night?
There's nothing for that night right now at all, really, and especially since 1782 got pushed back to the 5th.
Right.
Middlesex Street, that is.
Right.
Since they got
I
pushed
think
back to
Middlesex
the 5th,
Street, they needed more time anyways, if,
Yeah, and I don't think
They
there's
wanted to play
anything
that night.
right
They need
now.
another 6 months.
so.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to, if you think it makes sense for us to cancel that meeting, seeing as we're not going to have a quorum and we're not going to have a full board, and there's nothing on the agenda, you know, I'd be supportive of
Any of the
that.
board members have any problems with that? That we, since we have nothing scheduled for the agenda on April 24th, that we will cancel that meeting, and then our next meeting will be on May 5th. As we know, we do with that one public hearing on, then we have the one that we continue tonight. Right, okay? Having said that, any further comments from any board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna suggest, Aaron, if you could email us, just to confirm that.
Certainly, no problem.
That'd be all right.
Okay. Go ahead, Jerry.
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up that came up at the, I think, our prior public hearing on the property on Middlesex Street, Mr. Lockhart mentioned prior serving on NEMCOG and they were working on the Wood Street corridor. And at the last meeting, I did ask if we could put that back up on the radar. And they have gone through some personnel changes, and there's some projects that they're now revisiting, and that is certainly one of them. And so I did ask so we could have an update on where they are on that particular study. So I think, yeah, I think we probably have some things coming up in that area that would be helpful to have information. So I'll keep the board apprised
Okay,
of that.
sure, I
and-
appreciate that. Okay. Anything else, any further comments from any other board members? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion's made second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Good night, and thank you very much, everybody.
Good night.